The moment the groom's face went white with terror at his own wedding, everyone knew something was about to shatter. Standing in the back of that glittering ballroom, wearing a suit that cost less than the appetizers being served, Mason Reed had become the joke of the evening. The whispers cut through champagne bubbles. Who let him in? Is he lost? Did security miss someone? His 8-year-old son gripped his hand tighter with each cruel laugh. But in 60 seconds, this room full of billionaires and power brokers would learn the truth about the quiet man they'd been mocking all night. Stay with me until the end of this story. Hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this journey takes us. The invitation had arrived 3 weeks earlier on heavy cardstock that probably cost more than Mason's monthly grocery bill. Cream-colored paper with gold embossing, the kind that announced wealth before you even read the words. Olivia Sterling cordially invites you to witness the union of... Mason had stopped reading after the date and time. You don't have to come, Olivia had said over the phone, her CEO voice cracking slightly. I know it's asking a lot. I can't face them alone again. Not this time. Mason had known Olivia for 2 years. They'd met at a small business networking event where she'd been the only person who didn't immediately try to sell him something or extract his LinkedIn profile. She'd asked about Liam instead, about being a single parent, about the exhaustion that lived behind your eyes when you were raising a kid by yourself while trying to keep the lights on. Real questions, human questions. I'll be there, he'd told her. Now, standing in front of the mirror in his bedroom at 4:47 p.m. on a Saturday, Mason wondered if he'd made a terrible mistake. Dad, your tie is crooked. Liam stood in the doorway, already dressed in the navy suit they'd found at a consignment shop. The kid was 8, but sometimes seemed 40, especially in moments like this when his old soul eyes caught details Mason had missed. Come fix it for me then, buddy. Liam walked over, his small fingers working the fabric with surprising skill. YouTube tutorial, he explained, reading Mason's expression. You were at work late all week. I practiced. Something tightened in Mason's chest. The guilt that never fully left, the constant arithmetic of single parenthood, hours away from Liam balanced against keeping a roof over their heads, quality time measured against quality of life. He put his hand on his son's shoulder. You didn't have to do that. I wanted to look good tonight. Liam stepped back, examining his work. Is this wedding going to be fancy? Probably the fanciest thing we've ever been to. Fancier than that time we went to the Cheesecake Factory for my birthday? Mason laughed, the sound genuine and surprised. Yeah, buddy, fancier than that. The resort was 40 minutes north along the coast, a sprawling complex of white buildings that cascaded down cliffs toward a private beach. Mason's 10-year-old Honda looked profoundly out of place among the Teslas and Mercedes filling the parking lot. A valet in a crisp uniform approached, then hesitated, clearly unsure whether Mason's car belonged in this lineup. Just here for the Sterling Morrison wedding, Mason said evenly. The valet's expression shifted slightly. Not quite a sneer, but close. Certainly, sir. We'll take care of it. Liam caught the tone. He always did. Why did he look at us like that? Some people judge books by their covers. That's dumb. Yeah, Mason agreed. It really is. They followed signs toward the ocean ballroom, passing through corridors lined with art that probably cost more than Mason's annual salary. Other guests glided past in designer clothes, diamonds catching light, conversations full of casual references to vacation homes and private schools and investment portfolios. Mason felt Liam's hand tighten in his. We belong here, Mason said quietly. Olivia invited us. That's all that matters. Okay. But Liam's voice was small. The ballroom doors were open, revealing a space that defied the word room. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the ocean. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light across tables draped in silk. Flowers, actual flowers, not artificial, erupted from centerpieces in cascades of white and cream and the palest pink. A string quartet played something classical and complicated in the corner. Mason spotted Olivia immediately. She stood near the entrance greeting guests, wearing a dress the color of midnight that probably cost more than Mason's entire wardrobe. But it was her face that made him start forward. The smile that didn't reach her eyes, the tension in her shoulders, the way she held herself like armor. Mason? Relief flooded her expression when she saw him. You came. You actually came. Said I would. And this must be Liam. She knelt slightly, meeting the boy's eyes. Your dad talks about you all the time, says you're the smartest person he knows. Liam blushed. He has to say that. He's my dad. No, Olivia said seriously. He really doesn't. Trust me, I've heard him talk about plenty of people. You're the only one who gets that specific compliment. Some of the tension left Liam's shoulders. Mason felt a wave of gratitude toward Olivia. She'd known exactly what the kid needed to hear. Olivia, darling. A woman approached, dripping in jewelry and judgment. Her eyes swept over Mason and Liam with the kind of assessment that calculated net worth in microseconds. I didn't realize you were bringing guests. Aunt Patricia, this is Mason Reed and his son Liam. Olivia's voice had gone cold and professional, her boardroom tone. Mason, my Aunt Patricia Morrison. Charming. Patricia's smile was surgical. And what is it you do, Mason? Consulting. How vague. Her laugh was like wind chimes made of ice. Well, the ceremony starts in 20 minutes. I'm sure you'll find seats somewhere. She glided away, leaving a wake of expensive perfume and casual cruelty. I'm sorry, Olivia said tightly. My family is... It's fine. Mason had encountered Patricia Morrison's type 1,000 times. They were everywhere once you knew to look. People who measured human value in stock portfolios and zip codes and the right last names. Where should we sit? Anywhere you want. You're my guest. They found seats 7 rows back, off to the side. Close enough to see everything, far enough to avoid attention. Or so Mason hoped. But as other guests filtered in, the stares began. Subtle at first, quick glances, double takes, whispered exchanges behind raised programs. Then less subtle. Who is that with Olivia Sterling? I don't recognize him. New money? Darling, look at that suit. That's not new money. That's no money. Maybe he's part of the staff? Sometimes they sit in during ceremonies if they're short-handed. With a child. Don't be ridiculous. Liam heard every word. Mason watched his son's face close down, that familiar protective shell sliding into place. The same expression Liam wore after bad days at school, after kids made fun of their apartment or Mason's old car, or the fact that Liam's clothes came from thrift stores. Hey, Mason leaned close. Remember what we talked about? What matters and what doesn't? What matters is being kind, Liam recited. What doesn't matter is what unkind people think. Exactly. But Mason could see it still hurt. Of course it hurt. His son was 8 years old, sitting in a room full of people who looked at them like mistakes, like problems, like people who'd wandered into the wrong tax bracket. A bridesmaid walked past their row, gorgeous in sage green silk. She was talking to another woman, their voices carrying. Brought the wrong +1, clearly. I mean, look at him, and a kid? To a wedding like this? Maybe he's a charity case. You know how Olivia gets with her causes. They dissolved into laughter, never looking back. Mason felt Liam's hand tremble in his. Dad, I know, buddy, I know. The ceremony began before Mason could figure out what else to say. Music swelled, guests stood. The wedding party processed down the aisle in choreographed elegance. Bridesmaids in those sage dresses, groomsmen in tuxedos that fit like they'd been sewn directly onto their bodies. Then the bride, ethereal in white lace, her face glowing with champagne bubble happiness. And finally, the groom, Christopher Morrison III, 29 years old, heir to a commercial real estate empire, and according to the program, CEO of Morrison and Associates Development. He looked the part, tall, confident, expensive haircut, smile that had been whitened to perfection. He walked down the aisle like he owned it, then his eyes swept the crowd and landed on Mason. The smile vanished. Christopher's face went white, not pale, but actually white, like someone had drained all the blood out in one terrible second. He stumbled slightly, caught himself, kept walking because what else could he do with 300 people watching? But his hands were shaking. Mason could see them shaking from 7 rows back. Their eyes met for one frozen moment. Christopher looked away first. Did you see that? Liam whispered. The groom looked scared. Shh. Ceremony's starting. But Liam was right. Christopher had looked terrified. The ceremony itself was beautiful in that calculated way expensive weddings were. Perfect vows, perfect music, perfect kiss at the perfect moment. The bride cried delicately. The mother of the bride cried less delicately. Christopher looked like he was going to be sick. Then it was over and everyone was applauding, and the happy couple was walking back down the aisle while guests threw rose petals that had probably cost $50 per handful. "Cocktail hour on the terrace," someone announced. "Dinner service begins at 7. The crowd migrated toward the open bar like well-dressed moths to a flame. Mason and Liam hung back, letting the rush pass. "Do we have to stay?" Liam asked quietly. Mason looked at his son, this brave, smart, sensitive kid who'd already endured 2 hours of judgment and still had a whole reception ahead. Every instinct screamed to leave, to get Liam out of this place where people looked at them like they were contaminants. But then he saw Olivia across the room. She was surrounded by relatives, smiling that terrible corporate smile, and her eyes found his with something that looked like desperation. "Yeah, buddy, we have to stay." The terrace was somehow even more elaborate than the ballroom. Strings of lights crisscrossed overhead like captured stars. A 10-piece band played jazz standards. Servers circulated with trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres that were probably worth more per bite than Mason's lunch that day. Liam stuck close to his side, wide-eyed at everything. Mason grabbed 2 glasses of ginger ale from a passing tray and found a quiet corner where they could observe without being too obvious about not fitting in. "Mason!" A man approached, mid-50s, suit that probably cost 5 figures. He looked vaguely familiar. "Mason Reed?" "Yes." "Thomas Whitmore. We met briefly at that crisis management seminar 3 years ago in Boston. You gave a talk on corporate restructuring." He extended his hand. "I've been following your work. Brilliant stuff. Truly brilliant." Mason shook his hand, uncomfortable. "I appreciate that. Are you here as a guest, or—" Thomas's eyes lit up. "Oh my God, did Morrison bring you in? Is the company in trouble again?" "I'm here as a guest. Friend of the bride." "Ah." Thomas looked slightly disappointed. "Well, if you ever want to discuss opportunities, I'd love to grab coffee. I'm on the board at Whitmore Industries, and we could really use someone with your expertise." He handed Mason a business card, then got pulled into another conversation before Mason could respond. Liam tugged his sleeve. "Dad, what was he talking about? What work?" "Nothing, buddy. He has me confused with someone else." But Liam was 8, not stupid. He gave Mason that look, the one that said, "I know you're not telling me everything, but let it drop." Dinner was announced. Guests found their assigned seats, and Mason discovered they'd been placed at table 17, far from the main tables, tucked in a corner near the kitchen doors. The other people at their table were clearly also the B-list, distant relatives who barely knew the couple, plus ones who'd been invited out of obligation, people filling seats. "So how do you know Chris and Madison?" asked the woman to Mason's left, making polite conversation. "Through Olivia Sterling. She's a friend." "Oh, Olivia's wonderful, so brilliant. Such a shame about her divorce, though." The woman dropped her voice conspiratorially. "Between you and me, I think she works too hard. No man wants a woman who's more successful than he is, you know?" Mason concentrated on cutting Liam's chicken, not responding. Dinner service began. 7 courses, each more elaborate than the last. Liam ate quietly, trying everything even though half of it was food he'd never encountered before. Mason watched his son navigate oysters and foie gras with the same determination he applied to multiplication tables, figuring it out, adapting, surviving. The whispers continued throughout dinner. Mason heard fragments from nearby tables. "Definitely not one of us." "Heard he's unemployed." What was Olivia thinking? A boy around Liam's age at the next table over turned in his seat. "Hey, why are you dressed like that?" Liam looked down at his consignment store suit. "Like what?" "Like old. My dad says your suit is from like 10 years ago. He says you probably can't afford a new one." "Carter, turn around." The boy's mother yanked him back, but not before giving Mason an apologetic look that somehow felt more insulting than her son's honesty. Mason saw Liam's eyes go bright with tears that wouldn't fall. "Not here. Not in front of everyone." "Your suit looks great, buddy," Mason said quietly. "That kid doesn't know what he's talking about." "But he's right. It is old, and we can't afford a new one." "That doesn't make us less than anyone here." Then why does it feel like it does? Mason had no good answer for that. The speeches began after dessert. The maid of honor went first, telling stories about Madison's childhood, her kindness, her determination, sweet and expected. Then the father of the bride, getting choked up while welcoming Christopher to the family, also expected. Then the best man stood up. James Morrison, Christopher's older brother, commanded attention the moment he reached the microphone. Tall, charismatic, the kind of person who could work a room without trying. Chris and I have been through everything together, James began, his voice carrying easily across the ballroom. Childhood, college, our first terrible business ventures that Dad pretended to take seriously. Laughter rippled through the crowd. But there was one time, about 3 years ago, when I thought I might actually lose my brother. The laughter died. Everyone leaned forward slightly. Most of you don't know this story, James continued. Chris doesn't like talking about it. But I'm the best man, so I get to embarrass him a little. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. 3 years ago, Morrison and Associates Development was about to go under. Completely under. Not struggling, not in trouble, about to cease to exist. Christopher had gone pale again at the head table. Madison reached for his hand. My brilliant little brother had made some aggressive expansion decisions, James said carefully. He'd leveraged everything on a development project that fell through. The company my grandfather built, that my father expanded, that employed 200 families. It was all about to disappear. Chris was 26 years old, and he was about to lose everything. The ballroom had gone completely silent. We brought in consultants, the best crisis management firms money could buy. They all said the same thing. The company was too far gone. Liquidate, declare bankruptcy, cut our losses. James paused. But then someone told us about a consultant who specialized in impossible situations. Someone who turned around companies everyone else had given up on. Someone who worked in the shadows, who didn't care about credit or publicity, who just fixed things. Mason's stomach dropped. No, this was not happening. It took us 2 weeks to even track this person down, James continued. Another week to convince him to take the meeting. He came to our office on a Tuesday night after everyone had gone home. Just him, Chris, Dad, and me. And he looked at our books for 4 hours straight. Didn't say a word, just looked. Liam was watching the best man intently, not understanding yet why Mason's hands had gone rigid on the table. At midnight, this consultant finally spoke. He said he could save the company, but we had to do exactly what he said. No questions, no ego, no second guessing. Chris agreed immediately. What choice did he have? James's voice had gone soft with something like reverence. For 6 weeks, this man rebuilt Morrison and Associates from the ground up. He restructured our debt, renegotiated contracts, fired the people who needed to be fired, including some of Dad's oldest friends. He worked 18-hour days, never complained, never asked for anything except that we trust his process. And slowly, impossibly, the company stabilized, then improved, then actually started making profit again. Christopher was staring at his plate, his jaw clenched. He saved 200 jobs, 200 families. He saved my family's legacy. And when it was done, when the company was healthy again, you know what he did? James looked out at the crowd. He disappeared. Wouldn't take any public credit. Wouldn't let us announce his role. He just left. Went back to whatever life he had before we pulled him into our disaster. Oh my God, Olivia breathed from across the room. She was staring at Mason. Chris never forgot what that man did for him, James said. For us. He learned humility from that experience. He learned that being smart isn't the same as being wise. That sometimes the people who save you are the ones you'd never expect. He raised his glass. So this toast isn't just for my brother and his beautiful bride. It's also for the man who gave Chris a second chance when he didn't deserve one. The man who taught him what real leadership looks like. The room erupted in polite applause. I don't know if he's here tonight, James continued, his eyes scanning the crowd. Chris said he invited him, but he's here. Christopher's voice cut through the ballroom, amplified by some microphone still open at the head table. He stood abruptly, his chair scraping back. He's here right now. Every head turned, trying to figure out who Christopher was looking at. Chris, James started, but Christopher was already walking, not toward the head table or the microphone, toward the back corner of the room, toward table 17, toward Mason. The walk took maybe 15 seconds, but felt like hours. 300 pairs of eyes following Christopher Morrison III as he crossed the ballroom, his face a mask of emotions, gratitude and shame and fear, and something else Mason couldn't name. Liam's hand found Mason's under the table. "Dad? What's happening?" Mason couldn't answer, couldn't move, could barely breathe. Christopher stopped in front of their table. Up close, the young CEO looked exhausted despite his perfect appearance, like he'd been carrying a weight for 3 years and had finally found somewhere to set it down. "Mason Reed," Christopher said, his voice shaking slightly. "I didn't think you'd actually come." The room had gone so quiet you could hear the ocean through the windows. I should stand up, Mason thought. I should say something. But his body wouldn't cooperate. "I was 26 years old," Christopher said, and now he was speaking to the whole room even though his eyes never left Mason. "I was arrogant and stupid, and so sure I knew better than everyone else. I nearly destroyed my family's company. I nearly put 200 people out of work, people with mortgages and kids and lives that depended on the paychecks I was about to make impossible." A woman gasped somewhere in the crowd. "This man saved us," Christopher continued, his voice breaking. "Mason Reed, the person you've all been whispering about tonight, the person you assumed was staff or unemployed or some charity case Olivia brought because she felt sorry for him." He laughed bitterly. "You have no idea who he is. None of you do." "Chris, you don't have to—" Mason finally found his voice. "Yes, I do." Christopher turned to face the ballroom fully now. Mason Reed is the most brilliant crisis consultant I've ever met. He's saved dozens of companies from collapse. He's protected thousands of jobs. He's the person CEOs call when everything is falling apart and there's no hope left. And he did it all without ever taking credit, without building a reputation, without cashing in on what he could do. The same people who'd mocked Mason's suit were now staring at him like he'd materialized from another dimension. "Everything I have right now," Christopher said, his eyes going back to Mason. "This wedding, my company, my career, my life. It exists because you gave me a second chance, because you worked miracles when you didn't have to, because you protected my reputation even though I didn't deserve it." Tears were running down Christopher's face now, and he didn't bother hiding them. "I'm sorry," he said simply. "I'm sorry I couldn't thank you publicly before. I'm sorry you had to sit through people disrespecting you tonight. I'm sorry for everything except that you're here, because that means I can finally tell the truth." Silence crashed over the ballroom like a wave. Then someone started clapping. Olivia, standing at her table, her hands coming together in sharp, deliberate strikes. Others joined, hesitantly at first, then with growing enthusiasm until the entire room was applauding. Mason sat frozen, his son's hand still gripping his under the table, while 300 wealthy strangers suddenly looked at him like he was someone who mattered, and all he could think was, "I want to leave. I want to take Liam and go home." But Liam was staring at him with wide eyes, seeing his father differently, and Mason realized they were trapped here for at least a while longer. The applause finally died down. Christopher wiped his eyes, managed a shaky laugh. "So yeah, that's the secret story behind Morrison and Associates' comeback. Mason Reed, everyone." More applause. Mason nodded awkwardly, not standing, not speaking. Christopher returned to the head table looking lighter somehow, like confession had cut strings he'd been tangled in. The reception resumed its rhythm, music, dancing, conversation. But now everything had shifted. The whispers about Mason changed frequency. "Reed? The Reed Group consultant? I thought that was just a myth. My cousin's company used him 2 years ago. Apparently he only takes cases other people have given up on." Executives started approaching table 17. Business cards appeared, handshakes, apologies, wrapped in compliments. "I'm so sorry if I seemed dismissive earlier. I had no idea. If you ever have time, I'd love to discuss." Mason endured it with the same blank politeness he'd used earlier. Liam sat beside him, watching his father navigate this strange new attention with the same calm he'd shown when being insulted. "Dad," Liam whispered during a brief pause between networking vultures, "is all that true? Did you really save that company?" "It's complicated, buddy. That's what you always say when the answer is yes, but you don't want to talk about it. Too smart. His son was too damn smart." Olivia materialized beside their table, having somehow crossed the ballroom without Mason noticing. Can I borrow you for a minute? Mason looked at Liam. The boy nodded. I'm okay here. I'll be right back. Olivia led him out onto the terrace, away from the crowd, to a quiet corner where the ocean sound drowned out everything else. She turned to face him, her expression complicated. You could have told me. Told you what? Don't do that. Her voice was sharp. You let me complain about work for 2 years, about board meetings and difficult restructuring and all this corporate nonsense. And the whole time you are... She stopped, recalibrating. Why didn't you say anything? Because it doesn't matter. It clearly matters to 300 people in there who just realized they've been treating you like garbage all night. No, Mason said quietly. I mean, it doesn't matter to me. I don't need them to know who I am or what I've done. I never have. Olivia studied him for a long moment. You really mean that? I really do. Why did you help Christopher? If you don't care about credit or recognition, why take the case at all? Mason leaned against the railing, looking out at the dark ocean. Because 200 families needed their paychecks. Because bankruptcy doesn't just hurt the CEO, it destroys everyone below him. I didn't do it for Christopher. I did it for the receptionist who had a kid in college, the maintenance guy 6 months from retirement, the junior accountant with medical bills. He paused. People no one was thinking about except as numbers on a spreadsheet. But you thought about them. Someone had to. Olivia was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice had gone softer. I asked you here tonight because I was scared. My family has been pressuring me to remarry, to be less focused on work, to be more, she made a frustrated gesture, more whatever they think successful women should be. I thought if I brought someone, even just as a friend, it would take some of the pressure off. Did it help? I brought you here expecting them to judge you, she admitted. I thought at least they'd be so busy disapproving of my +1 that they'd leave me alone for once. I used you as a shield. I know. That made her look up sharply. You knew? Olivia, you're a brilliant CEO who has her choice of actual dates. You asked me, a single dad you met at a networking mixer 2 years ago, to a society wedding. It wasn't hard to figure out. And you came anyway, even knowing I was using you. You're my friend. Friends show up. Her eyes went bright with tears she refused to let fall. Everyone in there is going to treat you differently now. They're going to want things from you, access, advice, connections. It's going to be exhausting. Then I'll leave, Mason said simply. Liam's already had a long night. We should probably head out soon anyway. You're not going to capitalize on this? Network? Make connections? Why would I? Olivia laughed, the sound somewhere between amazed and frustrated. Because that's what people do at these things. That's the entire point. Not for me. They stood there in comfortable silence while the party continued inside. Music drifted out through the open doors. Someone was making another toast, laughter punctuating the words. Thank you, Olivia said finally, for coming tonight, for being exactly who you are even when people were terrible, for showing my family that their metrics for measuring people are bullshit. Language. I'm 30 years old and a CEO. I can say bullshit. Mason smiled. Fair point. They went back inside together. Liam had been cornered by the Carter kid and his mother, who were now apologizing profusely for the earlier comment about Mason's suit. Liam looked deeply uncomfortable with the attention. Ready to go home, buddy? Mason asked. Relief flooded Liam's face. Please. They said goodbye to Olivia, then made their way toward the exit. But they didn't make it far before a final interruption. Christopher and Madison, the bride and groom, blocking their path. Please don't leave yet, Madison said. She was beautiful up close, with kind eyes. We never got to properly thank you. The speech was enough, Mason said. It wasn't. Christopher shook his head. I've been carrying this for 3 years. I wanted to tell everyone what you did so many times, but you made me promise not to. You said it would hurt my credibility if people knew how close we came to failing. It would have. But it was the truth. Sometimes protecting people matters more than truth, Mason said quietly. You learned from your mistakes. The company stabilized. Your employees kept their jobs. That was always the point. Madison was crying openly now, not caring about her makeup. My father works at Morrison and Associates. He's been there for 23 years. When I met Chris, Dad told me about how scared everyone was during that time, how close they came to losing everything. He said someone saved them, but nobody knew who. She looked at Mason with something like wonder. It was you. You saved my dad's job. I'm glad it worked out, Mason said, meaning it. Christopher extended his hand. If you ever need anything, ever, you call me. They shook. Then Mason and Liam were finally outside, breathing in salt air and silence. The valet brought their Honda around, and if he was surprised it belonged to the man everyone was now talking about, he hid it well. Mason tipped him $5, all the cash he had on him, and helped Liam into the back seat. The drive home was quiet. Liam stared out the window at passing streetlights, processing everything. Dad, he said finally, as they turned onto their street, why didn't you tell me about saving that company? I don't like talking about work. But it was important. You helped all those people. That's why I don't talk about it, because it should just be normal. Helping people shouldn't be something you brag about. Liam considered this. The kids at that wedding think I'm cool now. Carter's mom told him to be nice to me because my dad is important. How does that make you feel? Weird. Like, I'm still the same person I was 2 hours ago. But now I matter because of something you did? He shook his head. That doesn't make sense. No, Mason agreed. It really doesn't. Their apartment complex came into view, a modest building in a working-class neighborhood, nothing fancy but clean and safe. Home. Mason parked in their assigned spot, and they climbed the stairs to Unit 3B. Inside, Mason hung up their jackets while Liam kicked off his shoes. The apartment was small, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen barely big enough for 2 people. But the walls were covered with Liam's artwork, and the fridge was full, and the lights worked, and the rent was paid. Enough. It was enough. Brush your teeth, buddy. It's way past bedtime. Liam obeyed without argument, too tired to fight. Mason followed him to the bathroom, leaning against the doorframe while his son brushed. Dad? Liam said around a mouthful of toothpaste. Are we poor? The question hit harder than Mason expected. Why do you ask? Everyone at that wedding had so much money, their cars and clothes and everything, and we don't have those things. No, Mason said carefully. We don't. But you're important. You save companies. You could probably make a lot of money if you wanted to. Probably. So why don't you? Mason helped Liam rinse his mouth, thinking about how to answer. Because money can't buy the important stuff. It can't buy more hours in the day to spend with you. It can't buy integrity or kindness or knowing you did the right thing. All those people at the wedding tonight, they have money, but most of them aren't happy. They're stressed and competitive and scared of losing what they have. Are we happy? I don't know, buddy. Are we? Liam thought about it seriously. Yeah, I think so. I wish we had more sometimes, but mostly I like our life. Me too. Mason tucked Liam into bed, the familiar ritual soothing after a strange night. He sat on the edge of the mattress while Liam burrowed under the covers. Dad, those people who were mean to us tonight, are they going to feel bad now? Maybe, some of them. Good, they should. Mason smiled slightly. Does that make you feel better? A little bit, Liam yawned. Mostly I just feel tired. Then sleep. Love you, Dad? Love you too, buddy. Mason watched Liam's breathing even out, his son's face relaxing into sleep. 8 years old, still so small despite how fast he was growing, still vulnerable to the cruelty of strangers and the strange mathematics of social status. The business cards from tonight were in Mason's jacket pocket, offers and opportunities and potential connections. He could capitalize on Christopher's public revelation, build a consulting empire, make the kind of money that would insulate Liam from ever feeling lesser than again. But sitting here in their small apartment, watching his son sleep peacefully, Mason knew he wouldn't, because this life they'd built, this quiet stability, this freedom from the pressure cooker of constant networking and status climbing, this was worth protecting. Let the world think what it wanted. Let the executives and billionaires whisper about the mysterious consultant who saved companies and disappeared. It didn't matter. The only thing that mattered was sleeping in the next room, safe and loved and enough. Mason turned off the light and left the door cracked open, just how Liam liked it. Tomorrow they'd wake up in the same apartment, drive the same car, live the same life. And that was exactly how Mason wanted it. Some secrets were worth keeping. Some power was stronger when it stayed quiet. And some fathers measured success not in dollars or recognition, but in the peaceful breathing of a child who knew, without question, that he was cherished. The wedding already felt like a fever dream, something surreal and distant and not quite real. Mason checked his phone one last time before bed. 3 missed calls, 7 new emails, all from people at the wedding wanting to connect and discuss opportunities. He deleted them all without reading. Then he plugged in his phone, brushed his own teeth, and climbed into bed in the apartment's smaller bedroom. Through the thin walls, he could hear their neighbor's TV, the familiar sounds of home. His last thought before sleep was of Liam's question. Are we happy? Yeah, Mason thought. Despite everything, the struggle and the judgment and the constant balancing act of single parenthood, yeah, they were. And that was worth more than any amount of recognition or wealth or status could ever buy. The world could keep its ballrooms and champagne and crystal chandeliers. Mason Reed had everything he needed right here. Sunday morning arrived with the kind of aggressive sunshine that felt personally offensive when you'd only slept 4 hours. Mason woke to the sound of Liam's footsteps in the hallway, lighter than they should be for a kid who usually stomped everywhere. You awake? Liam's voice came through the cracked door. Yeah, buddy, come in. Liam appeared in dinosaur pajamas, his hair sticking up in 3 different directions. He climbed onto the bed without asking, settling cross-legged next to Mason's pillow. My phone won't stop buzzing, Liam said. Mason sat up, suddenly alert. What? Kids from school. They're texting me about last night. Liam held out his phone. The basic model Mason had gotten him for emergencies only. The screen showed 17 unread messages. How do they even know? Mason took the phone, scrolling through messages from children who'd never bothered acknowledging Liam before. Is your dad really famous? Carter Morrison says your dad is like a genius. Can your dad help my dad's business? Carter's mom must have posted something, Mason said quietly, handing the phone back. That's how these things spread. What do I say? Whatever feels right, or nothing. You don't owe anyone explanations. Liam stared at the phone like it had betrayed him. Everything's different now. No, Mason corrected. Everything's the same. People just know something they didn't know before. But you're still you. I'm still me. This apartment is still our home. Nothing that matters has changed. Then why does it feel like it has? Mason didn't have a good answer for that either. They made pancakes together, the Sunday ritual that had survived everything else life had thrown at them. Liam measured ingredients while Mason worked the griddle, both of them moving around their tiny kitchen with practiced efficiency. The normalcy of it helped. Flour on the counter, butter sizzling, maple syrup waiting in its sticky bottle. Mason's phone rang while he was flipping the 3rd pancake. Unknown number. He ignored it. It rang again 30 seconds later. Different unknown number. You should probably answer, Liam said. The 5th call came from a number Mason recognized. His old mentor, Richard Chen, who he hadn't spoken to in over a year. I need to take this. Mason stepped into his bedroom, closing the door. Richard? Mason Reed. Richard's voice carried that familiar blend of amusement and exasperation. I have 14 voicemails this morning from people asking if I can connect them with you. Want to tell me what happened? A wedding got complicated. A wedding, right. Because that explains why Marcus Whitmore called me at 7 a.m. asking for your contact information, or why Jennifer Park emailed asking if you're taking new clients, or why Christopher Morrison told people what I did for his company. Silence on the other end. Then, oh, that's... Mason, do you have any idea what you just stepped into? Unwanted attention? Opportunity. Massive opportunity. Half the people calling me are Fortune 500 executives. They've been trying to find you for years. Do you know what your reputation is worth in crisis consulting? I'm not interested. You haven't even heard the offers. Don't need to. Richard sighed, the sound of a man who'd had this conversation before and knew he'd lose again. At least let me send a few names your way. Good people with legitimate problems. You could help them. I have a job, Richard. I work for Brennan Consulting 3 days a week. It pays the bills. I don't need more. You work part-time doing basic business analysis. Mason, you could be running your own firm, making 7 figures, actually using your abilities instead of wasting them on raising my son, having time to be a parent, living a life that doesn't require 80-hour weeks. Another silence. That's not what I meant. That's exactly what you meant. Mason kept his voice level. You think I'm wasting potential because I chose Liam over a career, because I stepped back instead of building an empire. I think you're one of the most talented crisis consultants I've ever seen, and you're hiding in a 1-bedroom apartment doing work a junior analyst could handle. 2 bedrooms, Mason corrected. And I'm not hiding, I'm living. Richard was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his tone had softened. How is Liam? Good, smart, dealing with some fallout from last night. Kids at school? Suddenly very interested in being his friend. That's hard. Yeah. Mason rubbed his eyes. Look, I appreciate you running interference on the calls, but the answer is no to all of it. Can I at least keep your number available for emergencies? Real emergencies, not just wealthy people with ego problems. Mason considered. Richard had been the one who taught him crisis consulting in the first place, back when Mason was 24 and desperate to prove himself. The man had principles, even if his definition of success looked different from Mason's now. Emergencies only, and you filter them first. Deal. They hung up. Mason returned to the kitchen where Liam had somehow managed to burn a pancake while simultaneously leaving it raw in the middle. How do you even do that? Mason asked, examining the culinary disaster. Special talent. Liam grinned, and some of the tension from earlier dissolved. They ate their pancakes, the good ones and the questionable ones, while watching nature documentaries. Liam's phone buzzed periodically, but he turned it face down on the coffee table and was ignoring it. Mason felt a surge of pride. 8 years old and already understanding that silence was sometimes the best response. Around 11, someone knocked on their apartment door. Mason looked through the peephole and saw Olivia standing in the hallway wearing jeans and a sweater, holding 2 cups from the expensive coffee place 3 blocks over. He opened the door. You know where I live? You put your address on the RSVP card. She offered one of the cups. I brought coffee and bagels. Cuck, can I come in? Mason stepped aside. Olivia entered, taking in the small space with the same assessing look she probably used in boardrooms, but her expression stayed neutral, appreciative even. Liam, hi. She set a bag on their counter. I brought chocolate chip bagels because your dad mentioned those are your favorite. Liam looked at Mason accusingly. When did you tell her that? Months ago. We talk sometimes. About my bagel preferences? Among other things. Olivia smiled. Can we talk for a few minutes? Adult stuff. You can keep watching your show. Liam shrugged, already absorbed in footage of Arctic foxes hunting. Mason led Olivia to his bedroom, the only private space available, and closed the door. She sat on the edge of his bed without asking, and the casualness of it felt strange. Olivia Sterling, CEO of a tech analytics firm, sitting on his rumpled sheets in his cluttered bedroom. You should see the family group chat, she said without preamble. 47 messages in the last 12 hours. All about you. I'm sorry. Don't be. Half of them are apologies for how they treated you. The other half are asking how they can invest in your consulting firm. She laughed. They think you run some exclusive operation they're not important enough to access. I work part-time analyzing supply chain logistics. I know. I looked you up after we met. Brennan Consulting, contractor basis, 3 days a week. Before that, you were at Morrison & Associates for 6 weeks. Before that, 4 different crisis consulting gigs over 2 years. Before that, she paused. Nothing. Your employment history just disappears. Mason said nothing. The thing is, Olivia continued, I also found 17 articles in business journals referencing an anonymous consultant who saved companies from bankruptcy. Confidential sources. Unnamed experts. ND, as so tight nobody would go on record, but the pattern matches your employment gaps perfectly. You've been busy. I'm a CEO. Research is what I do. She met his eyes. How many companies have you saved, Mason? I don't keep count. Guess. 23. The number hung in the air between them. 23 companies, Olivia repeated slowly. How many jobs is that? Total? Maybe 4,000, give or take. 4,000 families, 4,000 people who kept their health insurance and their mortgages and their kids' college funds because you intervened. She shook her head. And you live here, in a two-bedroom apartment in a building where the elevator doesn't work half the time. Why? This is enough. Is it? Or is it penance? The word landed like a punch. Mason turned away, looking out his bedroom window at the parking lot below. I don't know what you mean. Yes, you do. Olivia's voice had gone gentle. I lost a spouse too, 4 years ago. Cancer. I know what guilt looks like when someone survives and thinks they shouldn't have. Mason's hands clenched. You don't know anything about it. Then tell me, why? So you can psychoanalyze why I chose a quiet life over being a corporate celebrity? So you can convince me I'm wasting potential? So I can understand my friend. She stood, moving to stand beside him at the window. You show up for me. You listen when I complain about board meetings and family pressure and all my privileged problems. You never judge. You never lecture. You just see me as a person, not a position. She paused. I want to see you too. The real you, not the version you show the world. Outside, a kid was learning to ride a bike in the parking lot, an adult running alongside. The child wobbled, caught balance, wobbled again. Neither of them gave up. Her name was Sarah, Mason said quietly. We met in college, got married at 23. Liam was born when I was 24. The words felt rusty, unused. I was working at a consulting firm in Boston, 60, 70-hour weeks, building my reputation. Sarah handled everything at home, Liam, the apartment, the bills, life. I told myself I was providing, building our future. Olivia waited. Liam was 3 when Sarah got diagnosed, stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The doctor said maybe 6 months. Mason's voice cracked slightly. She lasted 4, and I was barely there for any of it because I was busy proving myself at some corporate crisis in Chicago. Flew home for weekends, called every night, thought I was balancing everything. Mason, I missed her last lucid conversation because I was on a conference call. A conference call, Olivia. My wife was dying and I was on the phone discussing quarterly projections. He turned to face her. She died while I was in a taxi coming from the airport. Liam was with her, 3 years old, watching his mother die because his father thought a corporate restructuring was more important than being there. You couldn't have known. I could have chosen differently. Every single day I could have chosen her, chosen Liam. But I chose work, chose ambition, chose building a reputation over building memories with my family. The words poured out now, years of them. So yeah, I live in this apartment and work part-time and turn down Fortune 500 offers. Because the last time I prioritized career over family, I lost everything that mattered, and I won't make that mistake again. Olivia's eyes were wet. Liam seems happy, well-adjusted. He's 8 years old and has barely any memories of his mother because I was too busy working to make sure he spent time with her before she died. He knows her from photos, from stories I tell him, but actual memories? Mason shook his head. Maybe 3. Maybe. But you're here now, every day. That counts for something. It doesn't bring her back. It doesn't give Liam a mother. It doesn't undo the fact that I chose wrong when it mattered most. They stood in silence. Outside, the kid on the bike was getting better, riding in wider circles, the adult stepping back. I don't think you're wasting your potential, Olivia said finally. I think you're using it differently. Liam is brilliant and kind and confident because you're present in his life. You help companies when it doesn't interfere with being his father. You found balance. It's not balance, it's penance. Maybe it started that way, but that's not what it is now. She touched his arm gently. Sarah would want you to forgive yourself. You didn't know Sarah. No, but I know you, and I know you wouldn't love someone who'd want you to punish yourself forever. Mason didn't respond. Couldn't. I should go, Olivia said. Let you have your Sunday. But Mason, what happened last night? People knowing what you can do, that's not going away. You're going to have to figure out how to handle it. I'll manage. She smiled sadly. I know you will. You manage everything. After Olivia left, Mason returned to the living room. Liam had abandoned the nature documentary for his sketchpad, drawing something with intense concentration. What are you working on? Picture of last night. Liam held up the pad. He'd drawn the ballroom with surprising detail, the chandeliers, the tables, the people, and in the back corner, two figures noticeably smaller than the others. That's us. See how everyone's looking the other way? I see. But then, Liam flipped the page. Same ballroom, but now all the figures faced the two in the corner. Everything changed, just because they knew something they didn't know before. Pretty accurate. Liam set the pad down. Were you really there when my mom died? The question hit like a freight train. What? I heard you talking to Olivia. You said you were in a taxi when Mom died, that I was with her but you weren't. Mason's heart hammered. They'd never talked about this. He'd never told Liam the specifics, just that Mom had been sick and died when Liam was little. How much had his son heard through the bedroom door? Liam, I don't remember it, Liam said quickly. Being there, I mean. I don't remember Mom at all except from pictures, but I didn't know you weren't there. He looked up, his 8-year-old face trying to process something too big. Do you feel bad about that? Mason sat beside his son on the couch. Every single day. Is that why we live here? Why you only work part-time? Because you're trying to make up for it? Partly. That's dumb. The bluntness startled a laugh out of Mason. What? You can't change the past. You told me that when I got upset about failing that math test. You said we learn from mistakes, but we can't undo them. We can only do better next time. Liam picked at the couch cushion. So you made a mistake before I can remember, but you're here now, every day. That should count for something. That's basically what Olivia said. Then maybe it's true. Mason pulled Liam into a hug, this small person who somehow understood complicated things better than adults did. When did you get so smart? I've always been smart. You just notice more when I say stuff you agree with. They spent the rest of Sunday doing aggressively normal things. Laundry, grocery shopping, Liam's homework, Mason helping with a social studies project about community helpers while trying not to laugh at the irony. Dinner was spaghetti from a box, sauce from a jar, garlic bread from the freezer section. Perfect. Monday morning brought reality crashing back. Mason dropped Liam at school and immediately noticed the difference. Parents he'd never spoken to suddenly wanted to chat. Moms who'd looked through him for 2 years now smiled and waved. Dads who'd never bothered learning his name suddenly knew it. Mason, hi, we haven't properly met. I'm Jennifer, Carter's mom. The same woman whose son had mocked Liam's suit 2 days earlier. I know who you are, Mason said evenly. I wanted to apologize for Saturday night. Carter mentioned he said something insensitive to Liam, and I feel terrible. Kids, you know. She laughed nervously. Anyway, I was hoping maybe the boys could have a play date sometime. Carter could really benefit from spending time with someone as bright as Liam. Liam doesn't want to be friends with Carter. And Carter never wanted to be friends with Liam until he found out I have a reputation in business consulting. So maybe let's skip the play date where your son tries to benefit from proximity to mine. Jennifer's face went red. I was just trying to be friendly. 2 years too late. Mason walked away before she could respond. Liam was waiting by the flagpole, backpack already on. Can we go? You just got here. I know. But everyone's being weird. Kids who've never talked to me keep asking questions about you. Teachers are looking at me different. He struggled for words. It's lonely being noticed by people who didn't see you before. Mason understood that completely. One day, you can stay home today. We'll call it a mental health day. Relief flooded Liam's face. Really? Really? Come on. They went to the beach instead, 40 minutes north to a quiet stretch that tourists hadn't discovered yet. Liam ran along the waterline while Mason sat on the sand, finally checking the emails he'd been ignoring. Richard had forwarded 63 messages, actual legitimate companies with actual crises, a manufacturing plant facing closure, a tech startup bleeding investors, a family business on the edge of bankruptcy, real problems affecting real people. The old Mason would have taken 3 of these cases immediately, would have worked 90-hour weeks solving them, would have sacrificed everything at the altar of helping, of proving he could fix anything. but that Mason had lost his wife while chasing that exact high. This Mason watched his son find sea glass and perfect shells and joy in simple things. He deleted most of the emails, kept 3 that looked genuinely desperate, forwarded them to a colleague who specialized in small business rescues. Let someone else be the hero this time. Liam ran back, pockets full of treasures. Look, this one's blue, and this one's green but really smooth, and this one, Dad, you okay? Yeah, buddy, just thinking. About work stuff? About how lucky I am to be here with you instead of in some boardroom somewhere. Liam considered this. The people emailing you, they need help, don't they? Some of them. But you can't help everyone. No, I can't. Would Mom want you to help them or stay with me? The question was impossibly complicated, impossibly simple. Mason pulled Liam down to sit beside him in the sand. Your mom was the kindest person I ever met. She would have wanted me to help everyone. Feed every hungry person, house every homeless family, save every struggling business. He picked up a smooth stone, turned it over. But she also would have wanted me to be your dad first, to put you ahead of strangers, to not make the same mistake I made with her. What mistake? Thinking I could do everything, be everything, that the world needed me more than the people I loved needed me. Mason met his son's eyes. I was wrong. The world has lots of consultants, lots of smart people who can solve problems, but you only have one dad, and I almost forgot that. Liam leaned against him. I like you being my dad more than you being famous. Good, because that's not changing. They stayed at the beach until afternoon, until Liam was sandy and exhausted and happy. On the drive home, Mason's phone rang again. Richard. Before you hang up, Richard said quickly, this is a real emergency, not some CEO with hurt feelings. Actual emergency. I'm listening. Remember Carrie Weston? She took over her family's automotive parts company after her dad had a stroke. You consulted for them 5 years ago. Mason remembered. Small company, 100 employees, good people. What's wrong? Their main supplier went bankrupt. They're about to lose half their contracts because they can't source parts. Carrie's trying to hold everything together, but she's drowning. 100 jobs, Mason. A lot of them people you met last time. Mason was quiet. I told her I'd ask, Richard continued. No pressure. But these are good people in a bad situation through no fault of their own. The kind of thing you actually care about. Send me the details. You'll look at it? I'll look. That's all I'm promising. Richard sent the files within minutes. Mason read them that night after Liam went to bed, and the situation was worse than Richard had described. Carrie was 28 years old, running a company she'd never expected to inherit, watching it collapse around her. The employees, Mason remembered some of their names. Martha in accounting, who'd worked there 30 years. Jose in the warehouse, who had 4 kids. Families whose livelihoods depended on Carrie figuring out an impossible problem. Mason made notes until midnight. Supply chain alternatives, emergency funding options, contract renegotiation strategies. The solutions appeared like they always did, patterns emerging from chaos. He could fix this. 2 weeks, maybe 3. Remote work mostly, with a few on-site visits. Wouldn't require sacrificing time with Liam. Could actually help without repeating old patterns. Tuesday morning, Mason called Richard. I'll take the Weston case, but I have conditions. Name them. I work from home except for absolutely necessary travel. I'm unavailable after 3 p.m. every day. Weekends are completely off limits, and my rate is half what I used to charge because they can't afford my old fees. Mason, you're worth half. Take it or leave it. They'll take it. You know they'll take it. Mason called Carrie next. She answered on the first ring, her voice tight with stress. Mr. Reed? It's just Mason. Richard told me about your situation. I know you're probably busy. I wouldn't normally ask, but her voice cracked. I'm out of options. The bank won't extend our line of credit. Our contracts cancel in 30 days if we can't source parts. I've called every supplier on the East Coast and nobody can help us fast enough. I'll need access to your books. Complete transparency. Every contract, every debt, every relationship. You'll help us? I'll try. Can't promise anything except my best effort. Carrie started crying. Thank you. Oh God, thank you. I didn't know what I was going to tell everyone. Martha's daughter just started college. Jose's wife is pregnant with number 5. These aren't just employees, they're family, I know. Mason remembered the feeling, the weight of being responsible for people's lives. Email me everything tonight. I'll start tomorrow. He told Liam over breakfast Wednesday morning. I'm taking on a project, helping a company that's in trouble. Liam looked up from his cereal. Like you did for that wedding guy? Similar, but this time it won't take over our lives. I'll work while you're at school. 3 p.m. I stop. Weekends we still have together. Nothing changes for us. Promise? Promise. Okay. Liam went back to his cereal, then paused. Dad? Is it the same company from before? The one you helped when I was little? No, different company. And I was different then. I didn't know how to balance things. You know now? I'm learning. The Weston case consumed Mason's mornings for the next week. He worked from their apartment, laptop on the kitchen table, phone on speaker while Liam was at school. The problems were complex but solvable. Finding new suppliers, restructuring contracts, buying time with creditors. Carey was smart and receptive, implementing his suggestions immediately. By Friday, they'd stabilized the immediate crisis. Not solved everything, but bought breathing room. I can't believe this is working, Carey said during their afternoon call. My dad always said you were a miracle worker. Not miracles, just pattern recognition and stubbornness. Well, whatever it is, you're saving us. Again. Mason glanced at the clock. 2:47 p.m. Liam would be home in 20 minutes. I need to go. We'll talk Monday. Of course. And Mason, thank you for doing this, for charging rates we can actually afford, for giving us a chance. After she hung up, Mason sat in the quiet apartment feeling something he hadn't felt in years. Not pride exactly, but satisfaction. He'd helped without sacrificing what mattered, had maintained boundaries, had proven to himself that he could do meaningful work without letting it consume him. Liam came home energized, talking about a science project, a new book, drama with kids at recess, normal 8-year-old chaos. They did homework together, made dinner together, watched a movie together. At bedtime, Liam asked, Is the company going to be okay? I think so. Still work to do, but we're headed in the right direction. That's good. I like when you help people. Liam yawned. As long as you're still here for dinner. Always. Even when I'm grown up and don't need you to make dinner anymore? Especially then. Liam smiled, already half asleep. Love you, Dad. Love you too, buddy. Saturday morning, Mason woke to 17 missed calls and 23 text messages, all from Richard, increasingly frantic. He called back immediately. What's wrong? Check the news, business section. Morrison and Associates. Mason pulled up his laptop. The headline appeared immediately. Morrison Development faces federal investigation for fraud. His stomach dropped. The article detailed allegations that Christopher Morrison had falsified financial documents, misrepresented project timelines, and defrauded investors. The investigation had apparently been ongoing for months. Charges were expected within days. This doesn't make sense, Mason said. I restructured that company 3 years ago. Everything was clean. I verified every document personally. Read the dates, Richard said quietly. The fraud happened after you left. Last 18 months. Christopher went right back to his old patterns. Mason read further. The project details were familiar. Aggressive expansion, over-leveraged investments, promises the company couldn't keep. Everything Mason had warned Christopher not to do. He didn't learn anything, Mason said. Apparently not. The employees going to lose their jobs when the company folds, which it will this time. Federal fraud charges don't leave room for restructuring. 200 families. The same people Mason had saved 3 years ago. Martha, who'd worked there 30 years. Jose with 4 kids, now 5. All about to lose everything because Christopher Morrison had repeated the exact mistakes that nearly destroyed them before. I need to go, Mason said. Go where? To figure out if there's anything salvageable. Mason, you can't save them from federal fraud charges. That's not a restructuring problem. That's a criminal problem. I have to try. Why? You don't owe Morrison anything. He made his choices. But the employees didn't. They just showed up to work. And now they're going to pay for their CEO's mistakes. Again. Richard sighed. If you do this, it'll be public, high profile. You won't be able to hide afterward. Mason looked at the laptop screen at the photo of Christopher Morrison looking shocked outside a courthouse. Then he looked at the closed door to Liam's room. I'll figure it out, he said, and hung up before Richard could argue. But sitting alone in his kitchen, Mason wondered if he actually could. Liam found him still sitting at the laptop 2 hours later, surrounded by printed documents and notes scrawled on the backs of envelopes because Mason had run out of proper paper. You said you were done working at 3, Liam said quietly. Mason looked up, disoriented. The clock showed 10:23 a.m., Saturday. He'd promised Liam they'd go to the Science Museum today. I know, buddy. I'm sorry. Something came up with work. The company you've been helping? No. Different company. One I helped before. Mason rubbed his eyes. It's complicated. Liam sat down across from him, still in his pajamas. Is it bad? Yeah, really bad. Are people going to lose their jobs? Probably. Can you help them? That was the question, wasn't it? Mason looked at the documents spread across their kitchen table. The evidence of Christopher Morrison's fraud was damning. Falsified reports, investor money diverted to personal expenses, projects that existed only on paper, the kind of mess that destroyed companies permanently. But buried in the disaster were 200 employees who'd done nothing wrong, who'd trusted their CEO, who'd survived one near collapse only to face another. I don't know if I can help, Mason admitted. The CEO committed crimes, federal crimes. That's different from poor business decisions. But you want to try anyway. The people who work there, I know some of them. They didn't do anything wrong. They're just going to lose everything because their boss is an idiot. Don't say idiot, Liam said automatically, parroting Mason's own rule back at him. You're right, because their boss made catastrophically poor choices while knowing better. That's more words, but it means the same thing. Mason almost smiled. Yeah, it does. So what are you going to do? I don't know yet. First, I need to understand how bad the damage really is, then figure out if there's anything salvageable. Then, he stopped. Then probably fail, because you can't restructure a company when the CEO is going to prison. You don't know that you'll fail. Buddy, I appreciate the confidence, but this is different. This isn't a business problem I can solve with spreadsheets and strategy. Liam picked up one of the documents, squinting at the numbers. What if the CEO wasn't there anymore? Could you fix it then? Maybe. If someone competent took over. If the fraud charges didn't contaminate the whole company. If investors didn't run screaming. If. Mason took the paper back gently. Too many variables I can't control. But some you can? Some. Not enough. They sat in silence. Outside, someone was mowing a lawn. Normal Saturday sounds. The world continuing while Mason tried to figure out how to save people who probably couldn't be saved. We were supposed to go to the museum, Liam said finally. Guilt crashed over Mason. I know, I'm sorry. I got distracted and lost track of time. It's okay, we can go tomorrow. No, it's not okay. I promised you. Promised myself I wouldn't do this. Mason started gathering documents. Give me 20 minutes to get dressed. We're going. But the work can wait. You can't. Mason looked at his son, 8 years old and already learning to accommodate his father's broken promises. I messed this up before. I won't do it again. Liam's face brightened. Really? Really? Go get dressed. Bring your sketch pad. I know you like drawing the dinosaur exhibit. They spent 6 hours at the Science Museum. Mason forced himself to be present, to actually see the exhibits instead of mentally working through Morrison's financial statements. Liam asked 1,000 questions about physics and paleontology and why museum cafeteria pizza tasted different from regular pizza. Mason answered what he could, admitted ignorance when he couldn't, and tried not to think about 200 jobs hanging in the balance. He mostly succeeded. On the drive home, Liam said, "Thanks for coming today, even though you had important work stuff. This is important too. More important. I know you think that, but do you believe it?" The question was too perceptive for 8 years old. Mason glanced at his son in the rearview mirror. I'm trying to believe it, he said honestly. Some days are harder than others. Like today? Yeah, like today. But you came anyway. That's the point, buddy. You show up even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Liam nodded, satisfied with that answer in a way Mason wasn't quite satisfied himself. Sunday morning brought a phone call from James Morrison, Christopher's older brother. The best man from the wedding who'd inadvertently exposed Mason's role in saving the company the first time. I know you have no reason to help us, James said without preamble. I know Chris screwed up. Again, worse this time. But I'm calling anyway because I'm desperate and you're the only person I know who might give a damn about our employees. I'm listening. The investigation is real. The charges are coming. Chris will probably go to prison. James's voice was steady but strained. The company will fold. But there might be a window, a few weeks before the indictment, where we could salvage something, spin off the legitimate divisions, find buyers for the viable projects, save some jobs even if we can't save the company. That requires cooperation from the board, the investors, and the federal prosecutors. You're not going to get all three. I know. That's why I need someone who's done impossible things before. Mason watched Liam in the living room, building something complicated with blocks. Sunday morning, their time. The boundary he'd promised himself he'd maintain. I can't take this on, Mason said. I have other commitments, a family, a life I'm trying to protect. I understand, I do. But Mason, these people trusted us, trusted Chris. They stayed after the first crisis because you saved them, and they believed the company had changed. And now they're going to lose everything because my brother is apparently incapable of learning from his mistakes. That's not my fault. No, it's Chris's fault, and my fault for believing he'd changed, and my father's fault for not watching him more carefully. But the receptionist who's worked here 15 years, the warehouse manager with 3 kids in college, that's not their fault either. Mason closed his eyes. What's your timeline? Indictment expected in 2 weeks, maybe 3 if we're lucky. After that, everything freezes while the criminal case proceeds. Assets get seized, employees get laid off. It's over. 2 weeks isn't enough time to restructure a company. No, but it might be enough time to save pieces of it, to find buyers for divisions that aren't contaminated by the fraud, to help people land somewhere soft instead of falling into nothing. James paused. I'm not asking you to save Chris. I'm asking you to help the people he hurt. I need 24 hours to think about it. Fair enough. And Mason, I know what this costs, not money. I know you don't care about that. But time, energy, the risk of getting pulled back into the work that almost destroyed you before. I wouldn't ask if I saw another option. After hanging up, Mason sat with his phone in his hand, staring at nothing. Liam appeared in the doorway. Was that about the bad company? Yeah. Are you going to help them? I don't know. What does your gut say? Mason looked at his son. When did you learn about gut feelings? You told me. You said sometimes your brain knows the answer before you're ready to admit it, and that's your gut telling you what's right. I say too much around you. Probably. Liam climbed onto the couch beside him. So, what's your gut saying? That I should help because people will get hurt if I don't. Then you should help. It's not that simple, buddy. If I take this case, it'll be intense. High pressure. I won't be able to maintain the boundaries I've set. I'll be working nights and weekends and for how long? 2 weeks. Maybe 3. Liam considered this seriously. That's not forever. No, but it's long enough to fall back into old patterns, to remember what it felt like when work was everything and you were an afterthought. I was never an afterthought to you. You were when your mom was dying. I chose work over being with both of you. I can't. Mason's voice caught. I can't risk doing that again. But I'm not dying, and you're different now. Liam put his small hand on Mason's arm. You came to the museum yesterday even though you wanted to work. That's different. One museum visit doesn't prove I've changed. Maybe not. But you stop working at 3 every day. You make me dinner. You help with my homework. You're here. Liam met his eyes. If you want to help those people, I think you should. I'll be okay for 2 weeks. You shouldn't have to be okay with me being absent. You should have a dad who's present. I do have that. Every day except maybe the next 2 weeks when you're helping people who need you. Liam shrugged. That seems fair. Mason pulled his son into a hug, the small person who understood complicated things with painful clarity. When did you get so wise? I've always been wise. You just notice when I say stuff that makes you feel better about the choices you want to make anyway. The laugh surprised Mason. Fair point. He called James back that afternoon. I'll consult on the Morrison case, 2 weeks maximum. After that, I'm done regardless of where things stand. Thank you. Seriously, thank you. But I have conditions. I work remotely except for absolutely critical meetings. I'm unavailable from 6 to 8 p.m. every evening. That's dinner with my son, non-negotiable. And if at any point this impacts my ability to parent, I walk. No matter what's on fire. Done. Whatever you need. I need complete access. Every file, every contract, every piece of evidence the prosecutors have. I need authority to make decisions without running them through committees. And I need Christopher to stay the hell out of my way. Chris isn't involved anymore. He resigned yesterday. I'm acting CEO until we figure out next steps. Good. He's the reason you're in this mess. Last thing you need is him making it worse. They spent an hour discussing logistics. James would send files tonight. Mason would review everything and build a preliminary strategy. They'd meet Tuesday to present options to the board. After the call, Mason sat at the kitchen table trying to figure out how he'd just agreed to the exact thing he'd sworn he wouldn't do. Liam appeared with his sketch pad. You're helping them. Yeah, I knew you would. How? Because that's who you are. You help people even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Liam sat down, flipping to a fresh page. I'm going to draw you working for my school project about community helpers. I'm not a firefighter or a police officer, buddy. No, but you help communities by saving their jobs. That counts. Mason watched his son sketch, the tip of Liam's tongue poking out in concentration the way it always did when he was focused. This kid who'd already sacrificed so much, a mother, a father who was physically present but sometimes emotionally absent, a childhood where money was tight and luxuries were rare. And now he was voluntarily offering to sacrifice 2 more weeks so his father could help strangers. I don't deserve you, Mason said quietly. Probably not, Liam agreed without looking up. But you're stuck with me anyway. The files from James arrived at 11 p.m. 3 gigabytes of documents, spreadsheets, contracts, and evidence. Mason started reviewing them immediately, knowing he shouldn't, unable to stop. The damage was worse than he'd expected. Christopher hadn't just committed fraud. He'd done it badly, leaving obvious trails and sloppy cover-ups that made the whole company look incompetent. Mason worked until 2 a.m., building mental models of the company's structure, identifying which divisions were clean and which were contaminated by fraud. By the time he fell into bed, he had the skeleton of a plan. It probably wouldn't work. The odds were terrible. But it was a chance, and chance was better than nothing. Monday morning, he told Liam the plan over breakfast. I'm going to be working a lot for the next 2 weeks. Late nights, early mornings. But I promise, dinner together at 6 every night. No exceptions. That's our time. Okay. And if you need me during the day, you call. School emergency, bad day, anything. I'll stop whatever I'm doing. I know, Dad. I'm serious. You're more important than this case. Liam looked up from his cereal. I know that too. You don't have to keep saying it. Yeah, I do, because I need to hear it as much as you do. The call with Morrison's board Tuesday morning was brutal. 15 executives and investors, all panicking, all blaming each other, none of them accepting responsibility for not catching Christopher's fraud earlier. Gentlemen, Mason interrupted after 20 minutes of circular arguing, you have 2 weeks before the indictment. After that, this company is done. So you can spend those 2 weeks pointing fingers, or you can spend them trying to salvage something. Your choice. And who the hell are you to tell us what to do? Demanded Gerald Morrison, Christopher's father and the company's founder. I'm the person James hired to clean up the mess your son made. Again. Mason kept his voice level. 3 years ago, I saved this company from Christopher's incompetence. I restructured your debt, renegotiated your contracts, and rebuilt your reputation. And you responded by giving him free rein to commit fraud for 18 months without oversight. We trusted him, Gerald said defensively. You enabled him. There's a difference. Mason pulled up the presentation he'd prepared. But that's not what we're discussing today. Today we're discussing whether you want to save any jobs or let everyone drown with Christopher. That got their attention. Mason walked them through the plan. Identify clean divisions. Find buyers for viable projects. Negotiate with prosecutors to separate legitimate business operations from fraudulent ones. Create a pathway for employees to transfer to new entities before the company collapsed. This is optimistic, said one of the board members, a venture capitalist named Marissa Chen. You're assuming prosecutors will cooperate, that buyers will want assets from a company under federal investigation, that we can move fast enough to execute before the indictment. Yes, Mason agreed. I'm assuming all of that, because the alternative is assuming failure and giving up now. What's your success rate on cases like this? I've never worked a case like this. Corporate fraud leading to criminal charges? That's new territory. Mason met her eyes. But I've pulled off impossible things before. So have you, or you wouldn't be on this board. Question is whether you're willing to fight for the people who depend on you or whether you're ready to abandon them. Silence around the virtual conference table. What do you need from us? James asked finally. Authority to negotiate on the company's behalf. Access to all divisions and their financials. And complete honesty. If I find more fraud you've been hiding, I walk immediately and you're on your own. There's no more fraud, Gerald insisted. Just what Chris did. You better hope you're right. The board voted to give Mason authority. 12 in favor, 3 abstaining, none opposed. Not a strong mandate, but enough. After the call, Mason sat in his quiet apartment and let the weight of what he'd just accepted settle over him. 200 jobs. 2 weeks. Impossible odds. Just like old times. Except this time he'd promised Liam he wouldn't disappear into the work. Wouldn't sacrifice family for the high of solving impossible problems. Wouldn't repeat his mistakes. The question was whether he could actually keep that promise when the pressure mounted. The next 3 days were chaos. Mason worked from early morning until late afternoon, then forced himself to stop at 5:30 to make dinner. Liam came home from school to find him chopping vegetables or stirring sauce, laptop closed, phone silenced. They ate together. Talked about Liam's day, the science project, the kid who'd been mean at recess, the book Liam was reading about space exploration. Normal father-son conversation while Mason's brain screamed at him about contract negotiations and investor calls and the ticking clock toward indictment. At 8 p.m., after Liam went to bed, Mason returned to work. Calls with potential buyers, meetings with division heads, strategy sessions with James about how to present their salvage plan to prosecutors. The coffee consumption was unsustainable, the sleep deprivation worse. But Mason kept his promises to Liam, and that mattered more than exhaustion. Thursday afternoon, he found a buyer for Morrison's residential development division, a mid-sized firm willing to take on the projects and most of the employees. Not perfect, but 50 jobs saved. Friday, another buyer emerged for the commercial property management side. 40 more jobs. By the following Monday, Mason had identified homes for 3 of Morrison's 5 divisions. 130 jobs protected. Not everyone, but better than nothing. The problem was the fraud had contaminated the company's core operations, the division Christopher had personally overseen. Those projects were unsalvageable, built on falsified data and investor money that no longer existed. 70 employees in that division had no clear path forward. Mason sat across from James in the Morrison offices Tuesday afternoon, both of them looking at the numbers that wouldn't add up no matter how they rearranged them. We're out of time, James said quietly. Indictment comes down Friday. These 70 people, there's nowhere for them to go. There has to be something we're missing. We've looked at everything. The core division is too contaminated. No one will touch it. Mason rubbed his eyes, gritty from lack of sleep. What if we didn't sell it? What if we spun it off as a new entity, completely separated from Morrison and Associates? With what funding? The projects are half finished and built on lies. There's no capital to complete them. What if the employees bought it? Employee ownership. They invest their severance, bring in outside investors for matching funds, finish the legitimate projects, and dissolve the fraudulent ones. James stared at him. That's insane. Probably, but it's better than unemployment. These are people who just found out their CEO defrauded the company they work for. You think they want to invest their severance in saving it? I think some of them might want to control their own destiny instead of hoping another corporation takes pity on them. Mason pulled up a fresh spreadsheet. It's a long shot. Maybe 10% chance of success. But 10% is better than 0. You'd need buy-in from the employees. Agreement from prosecutors that it's legally viable. Outside investors willing to gamble on a company born from fraud. James shook his head. That's not 10%. That's 1%. Then we better be really convincing. They worked through the night building the proposal. Employee ownership structure. Revenue projections. risk mitigation strategies. By dawn Wednesday, they had something coherent enough to present. Mason went home to shower and change, found Liam eating cereal before school, backpack already by the door. "You didn't come home last night," Liam said. Guilt stabbed through Mason's exhaustion. "I know. I'm sorry. We were working on something time-sensitive, and I lost track of—" "It's okay. I stayed at Olivia's." Mason's brain stuttered. "What?" "She came by around 8 when you weren't home yet. Said she figured you might work late and wanted to make sure I wasn't alone. We ordered pizza and watched a movie. She's nice." "I didn't know she was coming." "She texted you. You didn't answer." Liam grabbed his backpack. "She said you probably had your phone on silent and were too focused to check messages. She was right." Mason pulled out his phone. 7 texts from Olivia, starting at 7:30 p.m. "Working late? Want me to check on Liam? Heading to your place." "Liam's fine. Don't freak out. We're good for the night. He's asleep in your room. I'm on the couch. Left at 6 a.m. Make sure he gets breakfast." "I broke my promise," Mason said. "You were helping people. It's different." "No, it's not. I told you I'd be home for dinner. I wasn't." Liam sighed, sounding 40 instead of 8. "Dad, I know you're trying to save jobs. I know it's important. And I know sometimes important things take longer than you plan. It's okay." "You called Olivia?" "She gave me your number after the wedding. Said to text if I ever needed anything. So I did." Liam headed for the door. "I'm going to be late for school." "Liam, wait." "Dad, seriously? It's fine. You're doing something good. I'm proud of you. We're okay." He paused at the door. "But maybe text Olivia thank you? She seemed worried about you." Then he was gone, and Mason was alone in their apartment, staring at text messages from a friend who'd stepped in to parent his child because Mason had broken the one boundary he'd sworn he'd maintain. He called Olivia immediately. "Before you apologize," she said, "Liam's fine. We had fun. He's a great kid. I broke my promise to him." "You got absorbed in important work. It happens. Not to me. Not anymore. That was the whole point, maintaining boundaries, being present, not repeating the mistakes that cost me Sarah." Olivia was quiet for a moment. "Mason, you're not trying to save a company. You're trying to save 70 people's livelihoods with less than 3 days before a federal indictment. That's not normal work. That's crisis mode. Cut yourself some slack." "I told Liam." "Liam understands. He told me last night that you're helping people who need you, and that makes him proud even when it's hard." Those were his exact words. Mason sat down heavily. "I don't deserve him." "No, you probably don't, but you're trying, which is more than a lot of parents do." She paused. "How's the Morrison case going?" "Terrible. We've saved most of the jobs, but there's 70 employees in the contaminated division with nowhere to go. I'm trying to put together an employee ownership solution, but it's a long shot." "Employee ownership of a division founded on fraud?" "I know how it sounds. It sounds impossible, which means you'll probably pull it off." He could hear the smile in her voice. "Let me know if you need anything. And Mason, next time you're going to work through the night, text me. I don't mind being Liam's backup plan." "You shouldn't have to be. That's what friends do. We back each other up when things get hard." After hanging up, Mason texted her a thank you that felt completely inadequate for what she'd done. Then he texted Liam an apology that probably fell equally short. Liam responded immediately. "It's okay, Dad. Save those people. I'm good. Too understanding." His son was too damn understanding. Wednesday afternoon, Mason presented the employee ownership plan to the 70 workers whose jobs hung in the balance. They gathered in Morrison's largest conference room, faces ranging from hopeful to skeptical to openly hostile. "I know you have no reason to trust anyone associated with this company," Mason began. "Christopher Morrison lied to you. The board failed you. And I'm standing here asking you to take a massive risk on something that might fail." "Then why should we listen?" called someone from the back. "Because the alternative is guaranteed failure. You lose your jobs Friday when the indictment comes down. You take your severance and hope you find work somewhere else. Maybe you do, maybe you don't." Mason pulled up the presentation. "Or you take that severance, combine it with outside investment capital, and become owners of the projects you've been building. You control the company instead of working for someone else's company. Built on fraud, someone else said. These projects are contaminated. Some of them, not all. We separate the legitimate projects from the fraudulent ones. Complete what's viable, dissolve what isn't. It won't be easy. Success rate is maybe 1 in 10, but that one chance is yours. You control it. You benefit from it if it works. A woman in her 50s stood up. Martha from accounting, who Mason remembered from 3 years ago. Why are you doing this? What do you get out of it? Nothing. I'm walking away after Friday regardless of what you decide. Then why do you care? Mason met her eyes. Because 3 years ago I saved this company and everyone's jobs, and watching Christopher destroy it all again makes me angry. Not at you, at him, at the board, at everyone who should have stopped this and didn't. You're the ones paying for other people's mistakes? That's not fair, and I'd like to try to fix it, even though I probably can't. Silence filled the room. I'll do it, Martha said finally. I've worked here 15 years. I'm not ready to give up without a fight. Me too, said Jose from the warehouse. I've got 5 kids and another on the way. I need to try something. Others started nodding, standing, agreeing. Not everyone, maybe 40 of the 70, but enough to make the plan viable if they could find matching investors. Mason spent the rest of Wednesday and all of Thursday tracking down investors crazy enough to fund an employee-owned company built from the ashes of a fraud scandal. He found 3 smaller investment firms willing to gamble small amounts. Combined with the employee's severance, it was almost enough. Almost. Thursday night at 11 p.m., Mason sat in Morrison's empty office, staring at numbers that still didn't quite work. They were short $200,000. Not a fortune by corporate standards, but enough to kill the deal. His phone rang. Olivia. I heard about your employee ownership plan, she said. How? James Morrison called me. Asked if I knew any investors who might be interested in a high-risk social impact opportunity. And I'm in for $200,000. Mason's breath caught. Olivia, you can't. I absolutely can. I'm a CEO with discretionary investment funds. This qualifies as strategic investment in workforce development. It qualifies as gambling on a company that's probably going to fail. Then I'll lose $200,000. I've lost more on worse bets. Her voice softened. Let me help, Mason. You've been carrying this alone for 2 weeks. Let someone else shoulder part of the weight. This isn't your responsibility. No. But you're my friend, and your fight is worth supporting even if the odds are terrible. Mason closed his eyes. Thank you. Save it for when the company actually survives. Right now you've just got my money and hope. She paused. Go home. Get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be brutal. I can't. Still too much to finalize before. Mason, home, sleep. You're no good to anyone if you collapse from exhaustion. She was right. Mason gathered his things and drove home through empty streets, arriving at the apartment at midnight. Found Liam asleep in Mason's bed, a note on the pillow. Couldn't sleep in my room. Wanted to be close to you even if you weren't here. Mason's heart cracked open. He carefully moved Liam to his own bed, tucked him in, and stood there watching his son sleep. 2 weeks. He'd promised 2 weeks and they were almost up. Just one more day. One more impossible push. Then he could step back, return to boundaries, be the present father Liam deserved. One more day. Friday morning arrived with the weight of finality. The indictment would be unsealed at noon. Mason had until then to finalize the employee ownership structure and get it approved by prosecutors. He met with the assistant U.S. attorney at 9 a.m., a sharp woman in her 40s named Patricia Webb, who looked deeply skeptical of the entire plan. You want me to believe that 70 employees of a fraudulent company should be allowed to buy the division their criminal CEO was running? She asked. I want you to believe that 70 innocent people shouldn't be punished for their CEO's crimes. The employee-owned entity will complete legitimate projects and dissolve fraudulent ones. You get cooperation in the criminal case. They get to keep their jobs. Everyone wins except Christopher Morrison, who's going to prison regardless. If the new entity fails, these employees lose their severance and their jobs. That's worse than just losing their jobs. It's their choice to make. They're adults who understand the risk. Webb studied the proposal. This is the most optimistic business plan I've ever seen. You really think this works? Honestly, probably not. Maybe 10% chance, but they deserve that chance. Why do you care? You're not even getting paid for this. Mason thought about Martha with 15 years of loyalty, Jose with 5 kids, 70 people who'd shown up to work every day and done their jobs and deserved better than unemployment because their CEO was a criminal. Because somebody should, he said simply. Webb was quiet for a long moment. Then she signed the approval letter. 10% odds, she said. I'm going to regret this. Probably, Mason agreed, but you're doing the right thing anyway. At 11 a.m., Mason gathered the 40 employees who'd committed to the ownership plan, handed them the approved structure, watched their faces shift from disbelief to hope to determination. We're really doing this? Martha asked. You're really doing this. I'm done after today. Mason looked around the room. This is yours now. Sink or swim, you control it. Make it count. At noon, the indictment unsealed. Christopher Morrison charged with 15 counts of fraud. Morrison and Associates officially dissolved, but the employee-owned entity, renamed Cornerstone Development, survived in the wreckage. 40 jobs saved. Not 70, but 40. Better than zero. Mason walked out of the Morrison building at 1 p.m., climbed into his Honda, and drove home. His phone was ringing constantly with interview requests, investor calls, executives wanting to hire him for their own crises. He ignored all of it. At 2:45 p.m., he picked up Liam from school. His son climbed into the car, took one look at Mason's face, and said, "You did it." Some of it, not all of it, but some is better than none. Yeah, some is definitely better than none. They went home. Mason made grilled cheese sandwiches because anything more complicated felt impossible. They ate in comfortable silence, while Liam told him about the spelling test and the playground argument and the project due Monday. Normal life. The life Mason had almost lost again in pursuit of saving strangers. Are you done now? Liam asked. With the bad company? Yeah, buddy, I'm done. Good. I missed you. I was here every night for dinner. I know, but you weren't really here. You were thinking about work stuff. Liam picked up his plate, carried it to the sink. It's okay. You were helping people, but I'm glad it's over. Me too. That night, after Liam fell asleep, Mason sat on their small balcony watching traffic pass on the street below. The Morrison case was finished. Cornerstone Development might survive or might collapse, but either way, it was out of his hands. He'd saved what he could, lost what he couldn't, maintained most of his boundaries with Liam even when the pressure mounted. Not perfect, but better than before. His phone buzzed, a text from Richard. Congratulations on Morrison. Heard about the employee ownership play. Brilliant. Mason didn't respond. Another text from James Morrison. Thank you doesn't cover it. You saved what you could when no one else would try. Another from Olivia. Proud of you. Now rest. Mason turned off his phone and sat in the quiet darkness, letting the weight of 2 weeks finally lift. Tomorrow, he'd return to normal. Part-time consulting, school pickups, dinner with Liam. The quiet life he'd built to protect what mattered. But tonight, for just a moment, he let himself feel something like satisfaction. He'd helped, had made a difference, had proven to himself that he could engage with impossible problems without losing himself completely. The work had cost him sleep, peace of mind, time with Liam. But not as much as it would have cost 5 years ago. Not as much as it cost when Sarah died. Progress, maybe. Not redemption. That felt too grand. But progress. And for now, in this moment, that was enough. The silence lasted exactly 3 days. Monday morning, Mason woke to find his phone had accumulated 42 missed calls overnight. He'd turned off notifications after the Morrison case ended, but apparently the world hadn't gotten the message that he was done. Richard had left 6 voicemails, Olivia, 3. The rest were unfamiliar numbers with area codes from across the country. Mason deleted them all without listening. You're popular, Liam observed over breakfast, watching Mason's phone buzz insistently on the counter. I'm unavailable. They don't seem to know that. They will when I keep not answering. But the calls kept coming. By Tuesday afternoon, Mason's email inbox had exploded with requests. CEOs needing crisis consultants. Journalists wanting interviews about the Morrison case. Business schools asking him to guest lecture. 3 separate offers to write a book about corporate turnarounds. He ignored everything and focused on the Weston case, which had stabilized nicely. Carrie had found new suppliers and renegotiated most of her contracts. The company would survive. Mason was wrapping up his final recommendations when his doorbell rang at 2:47 p.m. He wasn't expecting anyone. Liam wouldn't be home for another hour. Through the peephole, Mason saw a woman in an expensive suit holding a leather portfolio. Corporate type. Probably selling something. He opened the door anyway, mostly out of curiosity. "Mason Reed?" The woman extended her hand. "Catherine Vance. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Meridian Industries. I need 15 minutes of your time. I'm not taking new clients. I'm not asking you to be a client. I'm asking for 15 minutes." She glanced past him into the apartment. "May I come in? This isn't a conversation for hallways." Something in her directness made Mason step aside. Catherine entered, took in the modest space without judgment, and sat on the couch when he gestured to it. "Meridian Industries is a manufacturing conglomerate," she began. 12,000 employees across 8 states. We make industrial components for automotive, aerospace, and medical devices. "I know what Meridian does." "Then you probably know we're in trouble. Our CEO died suddenly 6 weeks ago. Heart attack during a board meeting. He was 52. Catherine's professional composure cracked slightly. "David was my mentor, my friend, and he left behind a company structure so dependent on his personal relationships and decision-making authority that we're hemorrhaging contracts because clients don't trust anyone else to deliver. I'm sorry for your loss, but I don't see how I can help. The board wants to promote me to CEO. I've been COO for 3 years. I know the company inside out, but clients are walking away because they don't know me, don't trust that I can fill David's shoes." She leaned forward. "I need someone who understands crisis management to help me stabilize things during the transition. 6 weeks. Maybe 8. No. You haven't heard the compensation package." "Don't care about compensation. The answer is still no." Catherine studied him. "The Morrison case. You saved 40 jobs by creating an employee ownership structure no one thought was possible. Before that, you saved the Weston Automotive Company. Yes, I know about that too. Before that, at least a dozen other companies I was able to track." She paused. "You have a gift for finding solutions when everyone else sees failure. Meridian needs that right now. Meridian needs a good consultant. There are hundreds of them. Call Richard Chen. He'll recommend someone." "I don't want someone. I want you." "Why?" "Because you don't care about credit or building your reputation. You care about the people affected when companies fail. Meridian has 12,000 employees who depend on us getting this transition right. That's 12,000 families. I think that matters to you." Mason stood up. "Ms. Vance, I appreciate you coming here, but I'm not available. I have commitments I won't break. A son who needs me present, not distracted by corporate crises. A life I've built carefully to avoid exactly the kind of work you're describing." "I understand. I do." Catherine stood as well. "But let me ask you something. When you worked the Morrison case, did you maintain boundaries? Did you make time for your son even while handling the crisis?" "Mostly." "Mostly is better than never. That's growth." She pulled out a business card. "I'm not asking you to sacrifice your life for Meridian. I'm asking you to consult remotely, set whatever hours work for you, and help us not collapse during a vulnerable transition. You get to define the terms. Full control over your schedule and involvement. That's not how crisis consulting works. Crises don't respect boundaries. Then we'll figure out how to make it work anyway." Catherine set the card on the coffee table. 12,000 jobs, Mason. Think about it. After she left, Mason stared at the business card like it was a live grenade. Liam came home an hour later, dumped his backpack by the door, and immediately noticed Mason's expression. "What's wrong?" "Someone offered me a job." "I thought you had a job." "A different job. Bigger company, more complicated problems." "Are you going to take it?" "No." "You don't sound sure." Mason rubbed his eyes. 12,000 employees. If the company fails because of a bad transition, they all lose their jobs. That's a lot of people. Yeah. But it's not your responsibility to save every company that's in trouble. I know that. Do you? Liam sat beside him on the couch. Because you keep saying no, but you still have that look. What look? The one you get when you're trying to convince yourself of something you don't actually believe. Liam picked up Catherine's business card, examined it. Meridian Industries. That's the company that makes those medical things, right? The components for surgical equipment? Among other things. So if they fail, hospitals can't get the parts they need for surgeries. Mason hadn't thought about it that way. There are other suppliers. But not 12,000 other jobs for the people who work there. Liam set the card down. You should probably call her. I just finished telling her no. I know, but you're going to change your mind. You always do when it's about helping people. Liam stood up, heading to his room. Just promise you'll still be here for dinner. Liam, I'm not mad, Dad. I get it. This is what you do. He paused in the doorway. Just don't forget about me while you're doing it. Mason sat alone in the living room, Catherine's card burning a hole in his awareness, and tried to figure out when his 8-year-old son had learned to read him so completely. He called Olivia that night after Liam went to bed. Tell me I'm being stupid, he said without preamble. About what? Catherine Vance came to my apartment today, offered me a consulting position at Meridian Industries. That's not stupid. That's a massive opportunity. Meridian is Fortune 500. I told her no, but you're calling me at 10 p.m., which means you're reconsidering. I shouldn't be. I should stick to my boundaries, focus on Liam, not get pulled into another crisis that'll consume my life. Olivia was quiet for a moment. What did Liam say? That I'm probably going to take it, and I should just promise to still be there for dinner. Smart kid. He shouldn't have to be that understanding. He should have a dad who doesn't constantly get distracted by work. Mason, you're not the same person you were when Sarah died. You've changed, grown. The Morrison case proved that. You set boundaries and mostly maintained them. You can do consulting work without losing yourself to it. Can I? Or do I just keep telling myself that while gradually sliding back into the same patterns? I don't know, Olivia said honestly. But I know you won't forgive yourself if 12,000 people lose their jobs, and you could have helped prevent it. That's not fair. I can't save everyone. No, but you can save some of them, and you're really good at it. She paused. What scares you more, taking the job or turning it down? Mason thought about that. Taking it means risking everything I've built with Liam, but turning it down means living with the knowledge that I could have helped and chose not to. Sounds like you've already made your decision. You're just scared to admit it. Terrified, actually. That's good. Fear means you understand the stakes. Olivia's voice softened. Take the job, Mason, but do it on your terms. Make Catherine agree to your boundaries, and if she can't respect them, walk away. After hanging up, Mason pulled out Catherine's card and sent an email before he could overthink it further. The response came within 5 minutes, despite the late hour. Catherine agreeing to a call first thing in the morning. Mason didn't sleep well that night. Wednesday morning, he laid out his terms clearly. I work remotely except for critical meetings that can't be handled virtually. I'm unavailable from 3 p.m. to 8 p.m. every weekday. That's time with my son. Weekends are completely off limits, and I maintain my existing commitment to Weston Automotive. Mason paused. If at any point Meridian requires me to violate these boundaries, I walk immediately. No notice, no transition period. I just leave. Done, Catherine said without hesitation. You didn't even think about it. Because the alternative is trying to stabilize this company without expert help. Your terms are unconventional, but I'll take unconventional over nothing. She paused. Although I should mention the board will probably push back on your limited availability. Then convince them. That's your job as COO, trying to become CEO, managing board expectations. Fair point. They spent an hour discussing Meridian's specific challenges. Client retention, leadership transition, internal restructuring. The scope was enormous, but not impossible. 6 weeks, Mason said. That's my maximum commitment. After that, you're on your own. 6 weeks to stabilize a 12,000-person company during a leadership crisis. No pressure. You wanted the best. The best doesn't come without constraints. Catherine laughed. I'm starting to see why you're so good at this. Okay, 6 weeks. I'll send the contract by end of day. Mason hung up and immediately felt the familiar weight settle over him. Another crisis. Another impossible timeline. Another test of whether he could actually maintain the boundaries he kept claiming were non-negotiable. Liam was eating cereal when Mason emerged from his bedroom. You took the job, Liam said. Not a question. 6 weeks. Then I'm done. You said 2 weeks for the last one. That was different. This is more structured, clear timeline, better defined scope. Those are excuses. When did you become so cynical? When I started noticing patterns. Liam rinsed his bowl. It's okay, Dad. Just don't lie to me about how long it'll take. If it's going to be 2 months, say 2 months. It won't be 2 months. We'll see. The kid was too perceptive. Mason drove him to school in silence, both of them understanding that something had shifted again despite Mason's promises that it wouldn't. The Meridian contract arrived at 4 p.m. Mason read through 50 pages of legal language while making dinner. Spaghetti, again, because it was easy and Liam wouldn't complain. The terms were exactly what they'd discussed. Generous compensation that Mason barely glanced at, clear scope of work, his boundaries explicitly stated in Section 4.2. He signed it while the pasta water boiled. Dinner with Liam was quiet. Afterward, his son did homework at the kitchen table, while Mason reviewed Meridian's financial statements. The company's challenges were significant but solvable. Client relationships built too heavily around one person. Decision-making processes depended on that person's institutional knowledge. The kind of structural weakness that seemed fine until suddenly it wasn't. Mason built mental models of solutions. Distributed authority, relationship rebuilding protocols, client confidence strategies. The work was engaging in that dangerous way, problems that demanded solving, puzzles that his brain immediately wanted to attack. It's 8:15, Liam said. Mason looked up. What? You said you were done working at 8. It's 1:15. Sorry, buddy, lost track of time. I know. Liam closed his textbook. That's going to keep happening, isn't it? I'll be more careful. That's what you always say. The accusation hung between them. Mason wanted to argue, to insist this time was different, but Liam's expression said he'd heard those promises before and watched them break. You're right, Mason said instead. I keep saying I'll maintain boundaries, and then I let work bleed past them. I'm sorry. Liam looked surprised at the admission. Oh. I'm going to try harder, but you're right to call me out when I slip. I don't want to be the parent who has to police your work hours. You shouldn't have to be. That's my job. Mason closed his laptop deliberately. No more work tonight. Want to watch something? They ended up watching a nature documentary about deep-sea creatures, Liam providing running commentary about which animals were coolest and which were nightmare fuel. Normal father-son time. The kind Mason kept promising himself he'd prioritize. Thursday morning, Mason officially started the Meridian consultation. Catherine connected him with department heads via video conference. 12 faces on his screen, all looking skeptical that a remote consultant they'd never met could help with their crisis. I'm not here to replace David Brennan, Mason began. No one can do that. But I can help you reorganize around his absence instead of collapsing because of it. Easy to say, challenged someone from procurement, but we've already lost 3 major clients because they don't trust Catherine to deliver the way David did. Then we need to rebuild that trust. Give me access to those client files. I'll develop individualized retention strategies for each one. In how much time? End of week. The procurement director laughed. That's impossible. Probably, but I've done impossible things before. Mason worked Thursday and Friday with intense focus, building client retention profiles while simultaneously analyzing Meridian's organizational structure. The company's problems were layered, surface issues that connected to deeper systemic weaknesses, the kind of challenge that would normally consume him completely. But at 2:45 p.m. both days, he stopped working and picked up Liam from school. They went to the park Thursday. Friday they got ice cream and walked around the neighborhood. Mason forced himself to be present, to actually listen to Liam's stories about school instead of mentally working through Meridian problems. It was harder than it should have been. Saturday morning, Mason woke to an email from Catherine marked urgent. One of their largest clients, a major automotive manufacturer, was planning to announce Monday that they were switching suppliers. If Meridian lost that contract, it would trigger a cascade of other departures. Mason stared at the email. Saturday, his boundary day, time with Liam. But 1,200 jobs were tied to that automotive contract. He closed the laptop and went to make pancakes. Liam appeared in his pajamas, took one look at Mason's face and said, "Work emergency?" "How did you know?" "You get this expression, like you're thinking about something else while pretending to be here." Mason flipped a pancake, watching it land perfectly. A big client is leaving Meridian. If I don't fix it by Monday, a lot of people lose their jobs. And you want to work on it today. I should work on it today. But I promised you weekends were ours. Liam was quiet while Mason transferred pancakes to plates. They sat at their small table, syrup and butter between them. What if we compromised? Liam said finally. What kind of compromise? You work this morning on the emergency. I'll do my thing, read, draw, whatever. Then this afternoon we do something together. For real, no work brain. That's not fair to you. Fair to him, maybe not. But it's better than you being physically here but mentally at work all day. At least this way you fix the problem, and then you're actually present later. Mason looked at his 8-year-old son negotiating boundaries like a seasoned therapist. When did you get so mature? I've always been mature. You just notice when it's convenient. The honesty was brutal and earned. Mason had been so focused on maintaining boundaries that he hadn't realized Liam was learning to accommodate his father's failures rather than expecting better. Okay, Mason said, but not this way. Here's the real compromise. I work for 2 hours this morning while you're reading. Then we spend the afternoon together, and if I can't fix the problem in 2 hours, it doesn't get fixed today. The boundary matters more than the work. You mean that? I'm going to try to mean it. That's honest, at least. Mason worked for exactly 2 hours, built a client retention strategy for the automotive manufacturer, crafted talking points for Catherine to use in Monday's emergency meeting. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough, a foundation Catherine could work from. At noon, he closed his laptop and took Liam to the Science Museum like they'd vaguely planned. Spent 4 hours completely present, no phone checking, no mental drift to work problems. Liam noticed the difference. You're actually here today, he said while they examined a display about the solar system. Where else would I be? I mean in your head. Usually part of you is somewhere else thinking about work stuff, but today you're all here. Is it that obvious when I'm distracted? Yeah, you do this thing where you answer questions, but you're clearly not really listening, like you're on autopilot. Mason filed that observation away under painful truths his son shouldn't have to notice. I'll try to be better about that. You always say that. I know, but I mean it this time. You always say that too. They both laughed. The sound edged with sadness because it was true, and they both knew it. Sunday, Mason kept his laptop closed despite 3 urgent emails from Catherine. Spent the day with Liam doing aggressively normal things: laundry, grocery shopping, cooking together, the mundane rhythm of life that had nothing to do with corporate crises or impossible deadlines. Monday morning brought news that Catherine had saved the automotive contract using Mason's strategy. Crisis averted, 1,200 jobs protected. You're brilliant, Catherine said during their morning call. The client was impressed that we'd developed such a detailed retention plan over the weekend. Said it showed commitment. Good. What's next? They spent the week systematizing Meridian's operations, creating decision-making protocols that didn't depend on one person, rebuilding client relationships through structured outreach. The work was intense but manageable within Mason's boundaries. Mostly manageable. Tuesday he worked until 3:47 before realizing he was late picking up Liam. Rushed to school to find his son waiting by the flagpole, alone, the last kid there. I'm sorry, Mason said immediately. I lost track of time. I know. Liam climbed into the car. It's fine. It's not fine. I promised 3 p.m. pickups. You were close. 47 minutes late isn't that bad. The fact that Liam had calculated the exact delay made it worse somehow. Mason drove home in guilty silence. Wednesday, he set 3 alarms to make sure he stopped working on time. Picked up Liam at exactly 2:58 p.m. His son noticed. You're early. On time, actually. Feels early after yesterday. They went for ice cream despite it being a random Wednesday, Mason's apology in chocolate chip cookie dough form. Liam accepted it without comment, and they sat outside the shop watching people pass by. Dad, Liam said eventually, are you happy doing this work? The question surprised Mason. What do you mean? The Meridian job, the Morrison case before that. All the companies you save. Does it make you happy, or does it just make you feel like you're fixing things? What's the difference? I don't know exactly, but I think there is one. Liam stirred his ice cream into soup. Like, you seem calmer when we're just hanging out doing nothing, but you seem more alive when you're solving big problems. I don't know which one is the real you. Mason had no idea how to answer that. Maybe I'm both. Maybe. But you should probably figure out which one you actually want to be. The wisdom coming from his 8-year-old was simultaneously impressive and devastating. When had Liam become the one analyzing Mason's life choices? You're probably right, Mason admitted. I know. I'm always right. Liam grinned. That's my superpower. By Thursday, Mason had developed a rhythm. Work from 8 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. while Liam was at school. Pick up his son. 3 hours of dedicated family time. Then 2 more hours of work after Liam went to bed if absolutely necessary. It wasn't perfect, but it was sustainable. Until Friday afternoon when Catherine called at 2:15 p.m. We have a problem. The board is meeting in an hour. They're discussing whether to promote me to CEO or hire an external candidate. I need you on this call to explain the stabilization progress. I don't do board presentations. Mason, this is critical. If they hire externally, everything we've built collapses. The new CEO will want their own people, their own strategies. 3 weeks of work down the drain. I pick up my son at 3. That's non-negotiable. The meeting is at 3:30 Eastern Time. You'd be on for maybe 20 minutes, half an hour tops. Mason looked at the clock. School pickup at 3 p.m. Home by 3:20. The board call would overlap with dinner prep, with Liam's homework time, with the boundary he'd promised was absolute. I'll see what I can do, he heard himself say. Thank you. I'll send the call link. Mason picked up Liam at 3, drove home, and sat his son down at 3:15. I have a work call at 3:30. It's important, deciding whether Catherine gets promoted to CEO. I'll be on for about 30 minutes. Liam's expression closed down. You said 3 to 8 was our time. I know, this is an emergency. They're all emergencies. This one actually is. If Catherine doesn't get promoted, 3 weeks of work and 12,000 jobs are at risk. And I'm at risk of having a dad who's never actually available when he says he will be. The words hit like a slap. Mason knelt in front of his son. You're right. I'm breaking my promise. Again. And I'm sorry, but sometimes work is more important than me. I get it. That's not what I was going to say. It's what you mean, though. Liam pulled away. Just do your call. I'll be in my room. He left before Mason could respond. The board call went well. Mason presented stabilization metrics, answered questions about sustainability, watched Catherine get offered the CEO position. 12,000 jobs secured, a successful outcome by any measure. But when Mason emerged from his bedroom at 4:15, he found Liam's door closed and his son's dinner request, a simple note saying, "Not hungry," slipped under it. Mason knocked. Buddy, can we talk? I'm reading. Liam, please. You did your important work call. I'm doing my important reading. We're both busy. The dismissal was devastating in its accuracy. Mason stood outside his son's door, hand raised to knock again, and couldn't figure out what to say that wouldn't sound like more broken promises. He made dinner anyway, set a plate aside for Liam, ate alone at their kitchen table while reading client updates he didn't actually care about. At 7 p.m., Liam emerged for the bathroom. Mason intercepted him. I'm sorry, you're right. I keep breaking my promises. I keep saying boundaries are non-negotiable and then negotiating them anyway. I know. That's not fair to you. No, it's not. Liam met his eyes. But you're going to keep doing it because that's who you are. You care more about helping strangers than being reliable for me. That's not true, isn't it? You broke our time today for people you've never met, people who have other consultants they could call. But you're the only dad I have, and you still chose them over me. Mason had no defense against that truth. I don't know how to be both, he admitted. The person who helps people and the person who's fully present for you. I keep trying to balance them, but I'm failing at both. Then maybe you need to pick one. I can't choose between you and work that saves people's livelihoods. Then I guess you already did choose. Liam went back to his room, closing the door with terrible finality. Mason sat on the couch in their small living room, surrounded by evidence of the life they'd built. Liam's artwork on the walls, photos of the two of them at the beach, the TV that was too small, and the furniture that was too worn but was theirs. He'd been so focused on maintaining boundaries that he hadn't noticed how often he crossed them, how each emergency became an exception, how Liam had learned to expect disappointment and accommodation rather than reliability. His phone buzzed, Catherine texting congratulations and thanking him profusely for the board presentation. Mason turned off his phone and sat in the quiet apartment, listening to his son not talk to him through a closed door, and wondered how he'd managed to lose what mattered most while trying so hard to protect it. Saturday morning arrived with the weight of unfinished conversations. Mason woke early, made coffee, and sat at the kitchen table staring at his closed laptop. For the first time in 3 weeks, he didn't open it. Liam emerged around 9, grabbed cereal without acknowledging Mason, and settled on the couch with a book. The silence between them was dense and uncomfortable. "I'm not working today," Mason said. "Okay." "I mean it. No laptop, no calls. Just us." Liam turned a page without looking up. "Sure." The dismissal stung more than anger would have. Mason had broken enough promises that his son no longer believed new ones. "What do you want to do today?" Mason tried. "I'm good reading." "Liam, Dad, seriously, I'm fine. You don't have to perform being present just because you feel guilty." "I'm not performing. I actually want to spend time with you." "Then do it. But don't expect me to get excited about it when you'll probably bail halfway through for another emergency." Liam finally looked up, his 8-year-old face containing too much resignation. "I'd rather you just work than pretend you're not thinking about it the whole time we're together." Mason absorbed that. His son was right. Even when Mason was physically present, half his brain stayed engaged with work problems. The pretense of attention was worse than honest absence. "You deserve better than that," Mason said quietly. "Yeah, I do." Liam returned to his book. "But this is what I've got." Mason sat with that truth for a long moment. Then he stood, walked to his bedroom, and did something he should have done weeks ago. He called Catherine. "Mason, hi. I was just about to email you about Mondays. I'm done." Silence on the other end. "What?" "The Meridian consultation. I'm out. Effective immediately." "But we're only 3 weeks in. We agreed on 6 weeks minimum. The stabilization isn't complete yet." "You're the CEO now. You've got the frameworks and strategies. You can finish it without me." "Mason, I can't. We need you. The board approved funding for a full restructuring based on your involvement." "Then hire another consultant. Richard Chen can recommend someone excellent." "We don't want someone else. We want you. We're paying premium rates specifically for your expertise." Mason looked through his bedroom door at Liam on the couch, small and distant, and learning not to need his father because his father wasn't reliably there. "My son asked me to pick one, being his dad or being a consultant who saves companies. I should have picked him immediately, but I tried to do both and failed at the one that actually matters." Mason kept his voice steady. "So I'm picking him now. Find another consultant. I'm done." "Mason, please." "I'm sorry, Catherine. You're brilliant and you'll figure this out, but I can't help you anymore." He hung up before she could argue further. The phone rang immediately. Mason declined the call. It rang again. He turned it off. Liam had looked up from his book, watching. "Did you just quit the Meridian job?" "Yeah." "Because of what I said last night?" "Because you were right. I can't keep choosing work over you and calling it balance. It's not balance, it's just abandonment with better scheduling." Liam set his book down. "What about the 12,000 jobs?" "Not my problem anymore. Someone else can save them." "But you're really good at it." "I'm also really good at being your dad when I actually show up for it. That matters more." Mason sat on the couch beside Liam. "I've been telling myself I could do both. Maintain boundaries and take crisis cases. But every time I try, the boundaries break. The work expands, and you get whatever's left over." "You helped a lot of people, though. The Morrison employees, the Weston Company, Catherine." "I did. And I'm glad I could help them. But you're right that I've been choosing strangers over you. That stops now." Liam was quiet, processing. "What are you going to do instead?" "Focus on the Weston case until it's fully wrapped up. That's it. No more emergency calls. No more impossible timelines. Just part-time consulting work that fits around being your dad. People are going to keep asking you for help. And I'm going to keep saying no. You're bad at saying no. Then I'll practice until I get better at it. Mason put his arm around Liam's shoulders. You shouldn't have to compete with my work for my attention. You should just have it, automatically. Because you're my son, and that's the most important thing in my life. Liam leaned into the hug, small and warm and forgiving in the way kids were when adults finally got it right. I'm still mad at you, he said into Mason's shirt. I know, you should be. But I'm glad you quit. Me too. They sat like that for a while, the silence different now, not hostile but healing. Eventually, Liam pulled away. Can we go to the beach? Absolutely. They spent the day at their favorite quiet stretch of sand. Liam collected sea glass while Mason just sat and watched the waves, not thinking about corporate restructuring or client retention or anything except the feeling of sun on his face and his son's laughter when he found a particularly good shell. At some point, Liam ran over with his pockets full of treasures. Look at all of these. This blue one is perfect. And this green one is shaped like a heart. And, Dad, are you crying? Mason wiped his eyes quickly. No, just sand. There's no wind. There's no sand in the air. Okay, maybe crying a little. Why? Because I almost lost this. I almost chose work over days like this with you, and I'm really grateful I figured it out before it was too late. Liam climbed onto Mason's lap despite being almost too big for it. It's not too late. You're here now. Yeah, I am. They stayed at the beach until sunset, until Liam was sandy and exhausted and happy. On the drive home, his son fell asleep in the back seat, and Mason glanced at him in the rearview mirror, this small person who'd been far too patient with his father's failures. No more, Mason promised himself. No more broken boundaries. No more choosing impossible work problems over possible family moments. He meant it this time. Sunday morning brought consequences. Mason's phone, turned back on, showed 73 missed calls and 142 emails. Catherine had called repeatedly. Richard had left angry voicemails about professionalism and commitments. 3 board members from Meridian had emailed demanding explanation for his abrupt departure. Mason deleted everything except one email from Catherine, sent at 2 a.m., that just said, I understand. Thank you for the 3 weeks. I hope your son knows how lucky he is. He responded, he's starting to. And thank you for understanding. Then he archived all the other messages and put his phone away. You're going to get a reputation, Liam observed over breakfast. For what? Being unreliable, quitting jobs halfway through. Better that reputation than the one where I'm brilliant at work, but terrible at being a dad. Fair point. Monday morning, Mason called the Brennan consulting firm, where he'd worked part-time for the past 2 years. I want to come back full-time, he told his manager, Carol. Well, full-time for me. 25 hours a week maximum. No crisis consulting. Just basic business analysis on a fixed schedule. You're one of the most talented consultants I've ever met, and you want to do supply chain logistics analysis? I want predictable hours and work that doesn't follow me home. Is there a position like that available? Carol was quiet for a moment. Actually, yes. We just lost someone in our manufacturing analysis division. Regular hours, straightforward projects, decent pay. But Mason, it's going to bore you to death. I'll risk it. When can you start? Tomorrow. The work at Brennan was exactly as boring as Carol predicted. Mason analyzed inventory systems and production timelines and shipping logistics. Nothing urgent, nothing world-changing, nothing that required working past 2 p.m. when he left to pick up Liam. It was perfect. For the first 2 weeks, Mason kept waiting for the restlessness to hit, the need for complicated problems and impossible challenges. But it didn't come. Or maybe it did, and he just valued being present for Liam more than the high of solving crises. Either way, the routine held. Work from 8 to 2. Pick up Liam at 3. Homework and dinner and normal life. Weekends completely free. The simplicity was strange at first, almost uncomfortable. Mason had spent years believing his worth came from solving impossible problems. Stepping back revealed that his actual worth had nothing to do with corporate heroics. Liam noticed the difference. You're actually here now, Shik, he said one evening while they cooked dinner together. I've always been here. No, I mean here. Not physically present while mentally at work. You're actually paying attention. Is it weird? Kind of, but Good weird. Liam stirred the pasta sauce. I like this version of you better. Me too, buddy. 3 weeks after quitting Meridian, Mason got a call from Martha at Cornerstone Development, the employee-owned company born from Morrison's collapse. I wanted to update you, she said. We're still alive, barely, but alive. That's great, Martha. We finished the first legitimate project last week. Came in on budget and on time. The client was happy enough to contract us for 2 more buildings. Her voice cracked slightly. We're going to make it, Mason. It's going to be close, but I think we're actually going to make it. That's all you. I just gave you the structure. You did the work. You gave us a chance when everyone else gave up. That matters. She paused. Some of the employees wanted to chip in to pay you a bonus. As thanks. Absolutely not. Keep your money. Build your company. You sure? Completely sure. Just send me updates occasionally. I want to know how you're doing. After hanging up, Mason felt something settle in his chest. Not pride exactly, but satisfaction. He'd helped create something that might actually survive. Had walked away before it consumed him. Had chosen his son over the satisfaction of seeing it through. That was growth, maybe. A month after leaving Meridian, Olivia called. Lunch? She asked. My treat. I promise not to ambush you with job offers. They met at a small cafe near Mason's apartment. Olivia looked polished as always, but more relaxed than he'd seen her. How's boring consulting life? She asked. Surprisingly good. I analyze shipping routes and inventory systems. It's steady work with zero drama. You don't miss the crisis work? Sometimes. But I like being available for Liam more than I miss the adrenaline of impossible deadlines. Mason sipped his coffee. How's Meridian doing? Catherine's doing fine. She hired Anderson Consulting to finish what you started. They're competent if unimaginative. Olivia smiled slightly. She still talks about you, though. Says you taught her more in 3 weeks than most mentors teach in 3 years. I walked out on her. You set boundaries and stuck to them. That's different. Olivia set down her cup. Can I tell you something? The wedding was 4 months ago. I've watched you struggle with balance, make promises to Liam you couldn't keep, finally quit everything to actually be present. And honestly, I think you're braver now than when you were saving companies. How is walking away from work brave? Because walking away from something you're brilliant at, something that makes you feel important, something the world tells you should want, that takes real courage. Especially when you're choosing quiet family life over professional recognition. Mason thought about that. I don't feel brave. I feel like I'm finally doing what I should have been doing all along. That's what makes it brave. You're choosing differently despite years of momentum pulling you the other way. They finished lunch talking about normal things, Liam's school, Olivia's latest board drama, whether the cafe's pastries were worth the price. Friend conversation, easy and uncomplicated. As they were leaving, Olivia said, You know people are still going to ask you for help, right? The reputation you built doesn't disappear just because you stopped taking cases. I know, but I'm getting better at saying no. Are you happy, Mason? Actually happy? He thought about his quiet life. The boring consulting work. The predictable schedule. Coming home to Liam every day at the same time. Weekends that were actually weekends. Yeah, he said, surprised to realize it was true. I actually am. 2 months after the wedding that had started everything, Christopher Morrison requested to meet with Mason. The message came through James, asking if Mason would visit Christopher in county jail while he awaited sentencing. Mason almost said no automatically, but something made him agree. The jail was institutional and depressing, all concrete and fluorescent lights. Christopher looked smaller than at his wedding, thinner, tired, wearing an orange jumpsuit that hung loose on his frame. I didn't think you'd come, Christopher said, sitting across from Mason in the visiting room. Almost didn't. I wanted to apologize. For everything. For being too arrogant to learn from my mistakes. For putting 200 people's jobs at risk. Again. Christopher's hand shook slightly. You saved us once, and I repaid you by committing fraud and destroying everything anyway. You didn't destroy everything. Cornerstone Development is surviving. 130 jobs landed safely at other companies. That's better than nothing. It's not what you gave me 3 years ago. I had a second chance, and I wasted it. Mason looked at this young man who'd had every advantage and squandered it through arrogance and poor choices. Why did you do it? The fraud. You knew better. I wanted to prove I was as brilliant as everyone thought I was. I wanted the success to be mine, not because someone saved me, but because I earned it. Christopher laughed bitterly. So I took shortcuts, made up numbers, convinced myself I was so smart I could get away with it, and now I'm going to prison for probably 5 years. You could have just run the company honestly. I know, but honest success felt too slow. I wanted to be remarkable. He met Mason's eyes. Like you. Everyone talks about Mason Reed like you're some kind of legend, the consultant who works miracles. I wanted that kind of reputation. I don't have a reputation. I have skills I use carefully, and a life I protect jealously. That's not remarkable. It's just choosing what matters. Easy to say when you're as talented as you are. No, it's hard to say, and harder to live. Mason leaned forward. You want to know the real difference between us? When I had to choose between career success and being present for my family, I chose wrong. My wife died while I was chasing professional validation. I lost years with my son because I thought corporate victories mattered more than being his dad. He paused. You're getting a third chance, Christopher. Not in business. That's probably done. But when you get out of prison in 5 years, you can choose differently. You can decide that being reliable matters more than being remarkable. I don't know how to be unremarkable. Neither did I. But I'm learning. Mason stood. Good luck, I mean that. Walking out of the jail, Mason felt something release. He'd given Christopher the best advice he had. Whether the younger man listened wasn't Mason's responsibility. Some people learned from their mistakes. Some didn't. Mason could only control his own choices. That evening, Mason and Liam were cooking dinner when someone knocked on their apartment door. Mason opened it to find Olivia standing there with a large box. I know you said no more consulting, she said, but this isn't work. It's a gift. Inside the box were framed photos from the wedding, pictures Mason didn't know existed. Him and Liam at their table in the back row. Liam's face when Christopher revealed who Mason was. Mason and Olivia talking on the terrace. Moments captured that told a story Mason had lived but not fully seen. I had the photographer send me everything from that night, Olivia explained. Thought you might want these. Mason looked through the photos, seeing himself through a camera's eye. In most of them, he looked uncomfortable or tired or worried about Liam. But in one, a candid shot of him kneeling to talk to his son, his face showed something else. Love. Complete focus. The kind of presence that came from actually caring more about the moment than anything else. Can I keep this one? Mason asked, holding up that photo. They're all yours. After Olivia left, Mason hung the photo in the kitchen where he'd see it every day. A reminder of what mattered, who he wanted to be. Liam studied it. You look different in that picture. How so? I don't know exactly, but you're looking at me like I'm the most important thing in the world. You are. I know, but it's nice seeing proof. 6 months after the wedding, Mason's life had settled into a rhythm that felt sustainable. Work at Brennan was steady and unexciting. Liam was thriving in school. Their weekends were full of beaches and museums and simple adventures that didn't cost much but meant everything. Richard called occasionally, still trying to lure Mason back to crisis consulting. I've got a company in Austin that needs your specific expertise, Richard would say. I'm sure they do. Refer them to Anderson Consulting. Mason, you're wasting your talent on inventory analysis. I'm using my talent for being Liam's dad. That's not waste. Richard would sigh and hang up, only to call again 2 weeks later with another opportunity. Mason said no every time. It got easier with practice. The Weston case wrapped up successfully. Carrie's automotive parts company not only survived but started expanding into new markets. She sent Mason a thank you card with a photo of her employees at their annual company picnic, 100 people who still had jobs because he'd helped when they needed it most. Mason hung that photo next to the one from the wedding. Reminders of impact that didn't require sacrificing everything. One Saturday afternoon, almost 7 months after the wedding, Mason and Liam were at the beach when Liam asked the question Mason had been expecting eventually. Do you ever regret it, giving up the big consulting work? Mason thought carefully before answering. Sometimes I miss it, the challenge, the feeling of solving impossible problems. But I don't regret choosing you over it. Even though you were really good at it? Being good at something doesn't mean you have to do it, especially if doing it costs you the things that matter more. Mason picked up a smooth stone, turned it over. I was good at crisis consulting, but I'm also good at being your dad when I actually show up for it. And that second thing is more important. What if you could do both? I tried, buddy. For years I tried, and I kept failing at the one that actually mattered, so I picked. Liam was quiet for a moment, digging his toes into the sand. I'm glad you picked me. Me too. Even when I'm annoying? Especially then. They stayed at the beach until sunset, neither of them in a hurry to leave. Mason watched his son hunt for sea glass, this resilient kid who'd endured so much, losing his mother, having a father who was physically present but often mentally absent, learning to expect disappointment instead of reliability. But Liam was happy now, actually happy, not just coping, and that was worth more than any corporate victory Mason had ever achieved. As they walked back to the car, sandy and tired and content, Liam slipped his hand into Mason's. Dad? Yeah, buddy? I love you. Love you too. Like, a lot. More than sea glass. Mason laughed. That's pretty serious. Sea glass is your favorite. I know, but you're more favorite. Simple words from a 9-year-old that somehow meant everything. That night, after Liam went to bed, Mason sat on their small balcony looking at the city lights. His phone buzzed with another email from a company needing help. He deleted it without reading. Somewhere out there, corporations were failing. Employees were losing jobs. CEOs were making terrible decisions that would cost people their livelihoods. And Mason could probably help some of them. But not tonight. Not tomorrow. Not at the cost of the life he'd finally built with his son. Some people would call that wasting potential. Mason called it choosing wisely. The world had plenty of consultants who could save companies. Brilliant people who loved the work and could handle the pressure without sacrificing their families. But Liam only had one father, and that father had finally figured out that being present, actually reliably present, mattered more than being powerful. True strength wasn't solving impossible problems or saving companies from collapse. True strength was choosing what mattered and protecting it fiercely, even when the world offered you recognition and money and the chance to feel important. Mason had spent years chasing that feeling, had lost his wife to it, had almost lost his son. Not anymore. He went inside, checked on Liam one more time, his son sleeping peacefully, surrounded by books and drawings and the evidence of a childhood that was finally stable, and felt something settle in his chest that might have been peace. Mason Reed had saved 23 companies, had protected thousands of jobs, had built a reputation as the consultant who could solve anything. But his greatest achievement was right there in the next room, breathing steadily in the dark. Everything else was just noise. And for the first time in years, Mason was completely okay with that.